GBNews.
MP Neil Parish is facing calls to resign after being accused of watching porn in the House of Commons chamber.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, April the 30th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. This is the People's Channel.
Coming up for you this morning, porn in Parliament. MP Neil Parish under investigation for allegedly watching pornography on his phone as he rejects calls to stand down, claiming it was an accident. Do you think he should resign?
Falling from grace, three-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker is slammed for apparently not showing any remorse after being jailed for 2.5 years over a bankruptcy scam.
And let the May bank holiday getaway begin. 17 million of us are expected to hit the road over the long weekend. We'll get the latest from travel guru Simon Calder.
And Pope Francis has called on couples to be kinder to their mothers-in-law. And TV personality Kim Woodburn will be joining later with her cleaning tips, because we're talking about how often you change the bed sheets. Or do you even iron them?
Of course you do.
Life's too short to iron bed sheets.
Iron doesn't dust. Who am I working with?
I think you're beginning to wonder. You can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. Remember, we are the People's Channel. Get it right.
Now, the Tory MP under investigation for allegedly watching pornography on his phone in the Commons says he opened it accidentally.
Yes, Neil Parish has rejected calls to stand down as an MP after he had the Tory whip suspended yesterday. The Select Committee chair said he would be continuing his duties as an MP whilst cooperating with investigators.
Well, Parish himself was on GB News just 3 days ago, and this is what he told us about the incident back then.
I mean, I think the Whip's office will do a thorough investigation and we will wait and see that result. And I think, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken.
Well, let's talk to Peter Barnes, who's a political consultant and strategist, who joins us now. It's good to see you this morning. Look, there is an investigation underway, which begs the question that, that things need to be answered here. This claim that it was just opened accidentally. Oh, you're smirking. Do you not believe it?
I don't know. It is a little bit funny, I have to admit, this story. It's completely disgraceful, his behaviour. But like I said, we've got to wait for the investigation because these systems have been put in place. There's a new committee that this has gone towards after the bullying scandal and all the rest of it. I think we've got to have faith in the system. Otherwise, we then have to question, well, what's the point now in the system in the first place? It is, I have to admit, a story I wasn't expecting this week. I don't think anybody was really expecting this one at all. But it comes in light, obviously, with other MPs being accused of misconduct as well. And, it's right across the House. So the MP's behaviour is really becoming a quite hot topic issue.
And it hasn't before. I don't remember anything like this since John Major's time as Prime Minister. But it it sounds sleazy.
It does,
things
yeah.
that are going on.
Yeah, it does. I actually think a lot of ordinary people watching at home will just think, not another story like this. It's about time that I think the Parliament really got to grips with this problem. Like I said, it's just one after another now, and it's becoming a little bit, like I said, just a sleazy story that just doesn't sound good and makes everybody in politics just sound awful. When in reality, there's a lot of good people who work in Parliament who are being tarred with these bad apples, and it's about time we started kicking them out, if I'm being brutally honest.
But there's been sleaze in Parliament for ever and a day. Ever and a day. And certainly when you talk to... I know people who've worked there for a very long time, and some of the stories from back in the sort of 60s, 70s and 80s are absolutely horrifying when you think about it. Is it just that we suddenly... things start coming to light because people get tired with the government?
I think so, yeah. As governments get tired, there's more of these stories start to come out. But I also think, because we've got greater access to what's going on in Parliament now, thanks to social media, and, there's more media choice, I think these stories are a lot more common than they probably were even back in the 60s and back even like under the Major years. God knows what was even not made public at that time, considering, some of the stories that came out then.
Well, considering our Prime Minister was having an affair with one of his ministers.
Yeah.
We didn't know about it till afterwards. That's pretty bad in itself.
Yeah, for sure.
But can I just ask, for people who are on their tablets or iPhones or whatever a lot, constantly having a look at your emails, opening emails maybe that, or WhatsApps or whatever, that you don't always know, is it feasible that he, as he said in his excuse, that it happened accidentally?
I think it is, yeah. I think it's 100% feasible, but the question really is, should MPs be on the phones in the House of Commons at all? I know this has become...
Well, they are.
They definitely are. And there's an argument that, they need to access to their staff and they need to update news straight away. But whenever I watch Parliament or whether I'm in Parliament and watching the debates, I think it generally looks terrible. We just see MPs sat there on the phones. And, there was a story, I think it was just a couple of years ago, where an MP was playing Candy Crush. I just think visually, I think it looks awful. And I think if you're in the chamber, in the debate, you should be paying attention to the debate. That's why you're there. That's why people elected you to be in the House of Commons. It's not really just to be sat on your phone.
Yeah, that's why it's not just insulting to women, is it? The fact that he was watching something accidentally or otherwise on his phone. It's insulting to everybody because it's not very professional.
Yeah, 100% agree. If I'm in any kind of meeting and I'm just sat there on my phone, I will get a stern look from one of my directors, like, what are you doing? And I think we need to bring that back into the House of Commons and back into politics in general. A sense of professionalism. MPs have to start to hold themselves to a higher standard. I know we always use that phrase, but it's about time they started to live up to the standards that they claim to represent.
Look, can we also have a look at... Because, obviously, with Neil Parish, the focus is on the Tory side. Yeah. On the Labour side, what do we make of Beergate? Because it seems to be sort of gaining some momentum in some respects, and yet the police seem pretty adamant they're not going to bring any PCNs on this. Yeah,
Beergate's quite an interesting one. It really all came about with Richard Holden, who's the MP from up in Durham, who wrote to the police saying, in light of Rishi Sunak's fine, it's not really what Boris has done, it's in light of Rishi Sunak's fine, that is there a double standard there, and does it need to be investigated? There's then come out with the longer video that was published, I think it was on the Mail, I think they published it, and then, we've got a lot of other stories, a lot of other claims that have been brought out. The most interesting bit of all of it is, why did the Labour Party not really admit that Angela Rayner was at this event? For a long time, they denied that her presence was there, and now Keir Starmer's come out today and said it makes absolutely no difference. If it makes no difference, why were they for so long claiming that she wasn't there? Did everyone just magically forget that she wasn't in the room? I imagine if Angela Rayner's in the room, most people would notice. So did everyone forget?
Because it is said, isn't it, that Rishi Sunak is really sore about the fact that he turned up early for a cabinet meeting and found himself ambushed by what appeared to be a birthday cake or something for Boris. Yeah. So you can understand it's a very similar situation.
Yeah, and then what's really got to happen is the police in Durham have really got to come forward and say what's the material difference between Keir's incident and Rishi's incident. We've yet to have that, and like we said, they're looking into. I think they phrased it as new communications that they've received. I think was the phrase they'd used to see whether they're actually going to open the Beergate investigation, but we're just going to have to sit and wait on that one from the police's end.
It's frustrating, though, from everyone's perspective, everyone watching and listening this morning. isn't it? Because, I mean, I know a lot of people are just fed up with all these allegations. They don't want to hear any more. But if there has been a level of hypocrisy with what's been, said from the Labour front bench during all of this, well, I mean, that does have to be looked at, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The way that the Labour Party have really gone after this is a kind of moral issue. They've gone after it as a kind of... Keir Starmer's sat very firmly on his high horse and lecturing everybody. If it turns out that he's just as guilty as everybody else, it could be a resignation matter, really, because you can't start, casting stones against everybody else if you're just as guilty. And I think it's often the hypocrisy that brings people down in politics more than the actual allegation.
It's an appalling state of affairs, isn't
Yeah.
it? I mean, I think anyone sitting at home thinking, what is our politicians, what does it come to?
Yeah.
That we are, I mean, I can understand them losing faith totally. And you hear phrases like, oh, they're all pigs with their nose in the same trough. And whilst we know that's unfair because we know there are some very good MPs who do brilliant work, it's beginning to look that way. Oh,
yeah, definitely. What will be very interesting to see will be the turnout of the local elections in a couple of days. It's about people turning out to vote against the government, to kind of vote against a political party, or are they just going to stay at home? My gut instinct is a lot of people are just going to stay at home because they're saying, like, can't be bothered with any of them. As you said, this is becoming a little bit of a tit-for-tat, back-and-forth thing, or you try to catch each other out, a kind of gotcha situation. And I think people are just kind of
it's
bored of all
interesting.
that.
I mean, the Daily Express did a poll asking people what they really care about, and it's not... I mean, they're fed up, apparently, according to this poll. They're fed up with Beergate and anything else gate. They want the cost of living addressed.
Yes, 100%. Cost of living should be the number one priority that everybody should be talking about, but again, we're stuck with tit-for-tat politics. And whilst everybody likes a bit of Punch and Judy, eventually, this is real, this is lives, it's people's mortgages and jobs, and the government's got to get a grip on this, and Parliament and all politicians across the political spectrum have to grow up a little bit and get on with the job that they were put there to do.
OK. Peter Barnes, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you. Oh, well, let us know what you think about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it is the cost of living that we all wish that the government would address. But at the same time, if they're being done, as it were, for all those parties in number 10, you can see how aggrieved they feel that it's the same isn't happening with Beergate. So, yes.
And on that porn issue, because it was interesting, although we didn't get to read them out actually yesterday because we ran out of time, but there were quite a few people yesterday messaging in saying, well, could it just be opened accidentally? We've all been sent dodgy things on WhatsApp, haven't we? And you open it up and just go, oh, dear, and delete it as quickly as possible.
And I think probably people send those sort of things to MPs deliberately. So you can understand it, but you'd switch it off pretty quickly, wouldn't you? You'd get rid of it pretty quickly.
So I don't know.
So it does need investigating.
Isn't it interesting how something that seemed cut and dried yesterday, and suddenly you think, oh, I don't know.
I do find it extraordinary that he appeared on GBNews at the same time that he
when
knew.
he knew he must have been asked, he was going to be asked about it.
Yeah. That is... on the other hand, if he'd been booked for his interview and then withdrew when everybody was wondering who the MP was, he might have felt that would be the wrong thing to do too.
Yeah,
but it's not a good look.
It's not a good look.
When you appear on television, you're asked about that very thing. That's the time he should have actually said, it's me.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the only really honest thing to do.
It is, but I mean, can you imagine it being difficult? You wouldn't want to do it, but what else,
He put himself on television.
Had to know it was going to come out eventually.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us know what you think. I'd love to get your thoughts this morning on that.
GBNews at gbnews.uk.
Yes. Now, as Russia escalates its invasion of Ukraine, the Foreign Office has announced that the UK will send war crimes experts to investigate atrocities apparently committed by opposition forces.
And of course, this all comes as 2 British charity workers have been reportedly captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. It's understood the volunteers, named as Paul Uri and Dylan Healy, were detained earlier this week at a checkpoint in the south of Ukraine.
Well, meanwhile, NATO's Deputy Secretary-General has warned that it could be years before the war is over, as Britain, as we were reporting yesterday, is sending another 8,000 troops to Eastern Europe.
Well, we've been speaking to locals in Chilwell in Nottingham who live close by to a British Army barracks to hear their thoughts on those exercises.
First of all, I'd like to see a de-escalation. Obviously, everybody would. But in view of what's been emerging about the cares in the surrounding countries, to have support for them, I think, is very prudent, very essential. So it would be very good. I think it will also give some reassurance to the Ukrainians to know that they are not in this alone?
In my opinion, I served in Germany during the Cold War, when we had lots of troops to prevent Soviet expansion, and Putin seems to be carrying on very much the same attitude to expand the Russian Federation back to its old borders. So I think it's vital that we have troops there to deter his aggression.
Well, I'm glad to see the exercising, because I think they're going to need to go in, aren't they? It's just logic, that is. We've sat and watched it every day on the news, and it's horrendous. It's horrifying, isn't it? There's kiddies and everything. It's terrible, terrible.
Well, I think what they needed to do was a long time ago is start doing something to threaten them back a little bit, I think, more than anything, because they've just sent a missile straight into a meeting last night saying that it was full of arms and it was just a meeting conference place. So I think, yeah, they need to do something seriously quick, I think. Basically, there's a lot of innocent people getting killed, and it's all right bringing the people over here. I agree with trying to help them, but at the same time, our infrastructure can't take it, the hospitals can't take it, all the extra people here, it needs sorting out pretty quick, I think.
If we don't get actively involved, and if we're just showing that we are willing to keep a presence in the area, and that President Putin's actions and statements are not scaring us, then I think that's something, yes, we should be proactive in saying that we will not bow to people bullying. But, especially the last few decades have proven, becoming involved in other countries' issues have been very problematic for both ourselves, the USA especially.
Well, let's get more reaction from a former SAS soldier and author, Robin Horsfall. Good morning, Robbie. It's good to see you this morning. Look, it's just interesting, isn't it, getting everyone's views there in Chilwell this morning, that there certainly seems to be, although a bit of a divided view, there does certainly seem to be more willingness to accept that we do, as a country and with our armed forces, we need to prepare to do more.
Well, we're part of an alliance. We don't have the power on our own to make a huge difference. But every country that is connected to this problem and that is willing to stand up to Putin's bullying is going to create a powerful effect, an alliance that will actually prevent the war escalating any further.
The trouble is we are being warned that it's going to become a long war, and it's certainly what it looks like at the moment. And we're going to have more and more and more in that case of incidences like yesterday we heard about the former Royal Marine who has been killed there. Now we have 2 detained aid workers. Things like that are going to accumulate, aren't they?
Well, the first thing is we should beware false prophets. Nobody knows what the future will bring. We try to anticipate, we try to do the best we can under the present circumstances. When we switch from talking about a war down to what's happening to individuals, it confuses the situation. There are going to be people in country that have tragedies. There are going to be people killed. There are going to be British volunteers that know what they're going into when they go into the country, that come across difficult circumstances. But if we're talking about the war aims, the strategic aims of our government, the American government and the European Union in terms of controlling this and making sure that it doesn't get worse, that's a completely different picture.
Yeah, it's interesting to get that. You're absolutely right, but that overall bigger picture, and we do get sort of focused on individuals at times, understandably so. Look, in terms of these exercises and these 8,000 troops, what do you make of all of that? Because on one hand, we're told it's this huge deployment, the biggest since the Cold War. Then on another hand, we're told, well, it's something which was long in the planning. It's just NATO exercises, nothing to get worked up about. What's your assessment of what actually is going to be going on with these troops being deployed over there?
Well, I see it as bolstering the defences of Finland and Sweden, because they're not part of NATO at the moment, and they're vulnerable to have the same actions taken against them if they decide to join NATO, as has happened to Ukraine. So it's about bolstering up their armed forces and deterring Putin from redirecting his campaign against another country to distract us from what he's doing in Ukraine itself, if he has the strength, if he has the arms, if he has the will to do it. But he's throwing threats everywhere. And so moving our armed forces closer to the borders of Finland and Sweden is going to give them some security as well.
Do you think so far, and as a former soldier yourself, do you think so far we're getting it right and doing what we could, or would you play it differently?
I think the aim is to keep the violence contained within the borders of Ukraine, if possible. Once it starts to extend out into Moldova, Transnistria, Poland, and other countries, then there's a problem for everybody, because how do you stop it? So the aim at the moment for the alliances is to keep the violence contained in Ukraine, to support them. They have a very effective number of men available to fight their war. We keep supplying them with arms. We keep supplying them with ammunition, heavy artillery. And there's going to be a delay, because when it comes to sophisticated weapons, people need to be trained in their use before they can actually go onto the battlefield. Otherwise, it's a waste of time sending them. Hence the use of old Soviet material, which the Ukrainians are familiar with. But it's an ongoing process. But I think at the moment, the governments are doing everything they possibly can, as quickly as they possibly can, with a great deal of success. We saw the retreat from Kyiv, and we can see that the Russians are struggling to actually mount a counteroffensive in the east. They're making very little progress. It's raining. There's mud, which is very, very bad for armored vehicles. You've got anti-tank defenses dug in depth, waiting for them to come. So the Russians are going to take huge casualties over the next few weeks if they decide to push forward.
OK, Robin Horsfall, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for your insight.
Yeah, fascinating.
I always think when you talk to
somebody
people
who's actually been there and done it.
Well, been there and done it. And, you know, SAS, I mean, they're hard as nails, aren't they? I mean, they really can get the job done when they need to. It's scary stuff, really.
It is. You're watching GBNews. No, you're watching GBNews. My brain is not in gear yet, is it? Is that how it is for you when you wake up in the morning? You're watching GBNews.
News.
And you'll hear us saying quite a lot this morning that we are the People's Channel because, well, that's just what we are, because you get in touch with us. And it's lovely. And hopefully over the weeks we will get in touch back with you. In fact, we will a bit later on in the programme, I think, today. But it's interesting to hear from you how you're waking up. Danny has said, good morning, I just saw the tweet on mothers-in-law. We're going to be talking about mothers-in-law through the programme today because the Pope of all people has said, and we don't really know why he said it, be lovely to your mother-in-law, because remember, she is the mother of the person you love.
Which is true. And I think, actually, when you look at what the Pope says, he's absolutely right. However, what's he talking about it for?
I don't know. But when you think, why?
Got one.
Is it a peculiarly British thing that we've always had mother-in-law jokes?
Well, it can't. I thought it probably was, but it can't be, can it? If the Pope's talking about it. Or...
And why are we, or why were we? I don't think we are anymore, are we? Why are we mocking of mothers-in-law?
I don't know.
Odd thing, isn't it?
I don't know.
Anyway, Danny says I tried my best to keep away from her. She's not watching, is she, Danny?
I hope you're joking. Joseph says, my mother-in-law, wow, I have nothing to do with her anymore.
Oh, he says, stop it. This is not right. We've got to do what the Pope said. We've got to be lovely to our mothers-in-law. My mother-in-law was wonderful.
Was she?
Wonderful. Wonderful with the children. Brilliant, yeah.
Oh.
And it's nice, isn't it? And
That is nice.
She's sadly lost to us now, but she was a wonderful granny to my kids. And she was a blimmin' good mother-in-law to me.
Did you stay in touch with her after the divorce?
Yes,
everything?
yeah. So not much, but a bit, yeah.
Well, see, that's interesting.
Yeah.
See, I technically haven't got a mother-in-law yet, but I will do in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. So be nice.
And she's lovely. She's lovely, and we get on really nicely and really well. And I just think that whole in-law thing is a real blessing.
Well, it's traditionally, I think we always saw mothers-in-law as interferers, didn't we? They always interfered and told you how to bring up your children and told you how to behave, like they would have told their own children. They sort of adopt you and nag. But that's how it's just been traditionally seen, and I just wonder why.
Yeah.
Anyway, so shall we follow the Pope's advice, please? Be nice to mothers-in-law.
But in the meantime, if you've got any good mother-in-law jokes, you know, just for a laugh.
Yeah. Dean says,
nice.
"Morning, Stephen and Anne. I'm still awake after a night out. I've had one or two, but I decided to.
I've had one or two.
All right. He says I'm a bit drunk.
Hey! Good one, Dean.
I've decided to wait for the best breakfast show to start." Thank you. I think you mean us.
Yeah, of course he does. Of course he does. Poppy's in Mallaig in Scotland. Good to start the day with you two. It's good to start it with you as well, Poppy.
And so says Jackie, "It's 6:01 and I'm smiling already. What a wonderful start to the day you are. Thank you."
Oh, you are.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
We
honestly.
are the People's Channel, and as we are, please get in touch with us because, well, you're our viewers, and we wouldn't be anything without you, would we?
No, and this is about you, isn't it? It's all about you and what you think and what your views and hopes, aspirations and irritations are. So do let us know, as long as the irritations aren't us. And that's...
Yeah. Oh, and we want to know if you are on your bed sheets.
Oh, yes.
It's become a controversial subject.
Here this morning.
Yes. Well, I think it's generally a controversial subject because some people iron their bed sheets and other people don't.
Yes.
Because life's too short.
They're talking to Kim Woodburn a little bit later on. I mean, that's about how often to change the bed sheets. I mean, I change the bed sheets every year whether they need it or not.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. Every month, at least. Do stay with us to find out why jailed tennis star Boris Becker will most likely only serve half of his sentence.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.27, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, live across the UK on your TV, your radio and online.
And we're the People's Channel, so do get in touch with us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, the former tennis star Boris Becker is behind bars this morning after being jailed for 2.5 years for hiding hundreds of thousands of pounds in assets to avoid paying his debts.
The three-time Wimbledon champ was sentenced yesterday after being convicted of 4 charges under the Insolvency Act.
Well, let's talk to Richard Kramer, who's managing partner at the law firm Front Row Legal. Morning to you. I mean, there was a potential of a 7-year sentence for this, wasn't there? I mean, considering he's got 2.5 and he'll be out in half of that time, as is the way these days, do you think this has been a fair sentence?
Probably, yes. We'll have to see if there's going to be any appeal.
But a 30-month sentence when it could have been worse probably sounds a fair and balanced decision. He'll serve half of that because if he behaves himself, then he'll qualify for parole. But really, quite frankly, whether it's half the sentence, 30 months or whatever, we've seen an amazing sort of superstar in tennis fall from grace, probably as high as or a bigger capitulation as we've seen for many sportsmen. A real tragedy.
Yes, as the newspapers are describing him, he's gone from champ to chump. Can you explain what it is that he did wrong? Because it's all to do with insolvency. In other words, when you declare yourself bankrupt or you are declared bankrupt, what did he do that was wrong?
OK, I'll try and keep it fairly simple, but he was made bankrupt. He had debts at that time of £50 million, which is staggering. But when one is made bankrupt, the affairs of the bankruptcy are handled by what's known as a trustee in bankruptcy, which is an insolvency practitioner. Boris Becker is under an obligation to provide and give full cooperation. So he has to disclose his assets, he has to disclose where all his money is. And it transpired that not only was he not cooperating, but he was not disclosing some of those assets, and he was still engaged in spending money whilst he was a bankrupt. Now, usually the numbers associated with the bankruptcy are much lower, but this is a high-profile individual, and in my view, the Insolvency Service really wanted to set an example, and because of the high value of the debt and the level of expenditure when he was made bankrupt, clearly the Insolvency Service were looking to make an example of somebody, attract the headlines. And what this will do is this will send a message to others who were made bankrupt that you have to comply with the rules. You have to really abide by what your trustee in bankruptcy wants. And he failed to do so spectacularly, leading to a criminal conviction. Now, it's a rare case. One doesn't see this very often, but because of the numbers involved and because of Boris Becker, we have seen a criminal prosecution and the extraordinary headlines that it's reached this morning.
I mean, it is a case of just trying to avoid paying your debts, isn't it, in effect?
Yes, I mean, look, he had assets. And when Boris Becker was made bankrupt, those assets don't belong to him. They belong to his trustee. So the money goes into a pot, and those monies should be distributed to pay to the creditors. He was owing £50 million, and I'm not saying all the creditors would have got 100p in the pound. Probably nothing like that. But if, let's say, there's £50 million of debt and there's £10 million of assets, then that means the creditors should perhaps be getting 20p in the pound as a dividend. But clearly, and the judge said it yesterday, he showed no contrition. He didn't really care. As far as he was concerned, he was entitled to spend the money as he wanted. He concealed his assets. And this has led to this disastrous scenario. I mean, in effect, he's ruined now. He had a high-profile gig with the BBC when he was at Wimbledon, but really it's a fall from grace, which is really unprecedented.
OK, Richard Kramer, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, it is. I sort of think people like him, when they've done something this wrong, and it's very wrong, they deserve to be punished, don't they? I mean, I have no... It is a big fall from grace, but I have zero sympathy. Got to be honest.
So he's in jail right now, isn't he?
Yeah.
It is astonishing, and it's sad in a way that you see it in certain sport, particularly sports stars. Maybe that's unfair. You see it in others as well, don't you? People who just continually get it wrong.
Mm.
But the fact that he's not... Most people in his situation would have released a statement saying, deeply ashamed, very sorry, let my fans down, please forgive me, etc., and I'll take what's coming to me. But no, he is showing no remorse at all, no humility, which doesn't bode well either.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Lisa's been in touch this morning. Lisa, good morning to you. Look at me, she says. I'm now waking up early to watch you from the off. I enjoy U2 so much.
Are you enjoying the national anthem? If you're waking up early at 6 o'clock, the big bonus is, I think, the national anthem at the beginning. It's so lovely. Then we're going to talk about we've got Beddinggate, Beergate, and Porngate to talk about this morning.
Excellent.
Bedding is whether or not how often you change your sheets and whether you iron them or not. George says it's a must. When I'm rich enough, I would have staff to change my bedding every day. I'm with you there. Oh. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah.
Clean bed sheets every day would be wonderful.
Clean and crisp
bed
sheets.
I quite agree. Yeah.
Ironed.
OK,
yes.
And then there's Beergate, and Dennis says, the trouble is that Beergate is being investigated by a different police force. The Met dish out fines, Durham police dish out cake. That's not necessarily true, because the Met didn't want to investigate Number 10 initially, did they?
No, but now that they've started, they can't stop themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And on Porngate, Jim says, a porn-viewing MP in the chamber should be sacked. Oh, I was watching it accidentally. We aren't stupid. Stop MPs on their phones, then. It's disturbing to think they aren't paying attention to the issues.
Maybe they should have to, like kids in class, you have to put your phone in a box while you're in
class.
class.
Never wear a radio mic.
You've got to put it in a box
when I'm in the toilet.
When you go into number 10, it's... you have to put your phone
in
the box.
Yes, that's right.
Nice to see you.
Thing to do. Yeah.
Oh, right. We're going to take a break.
I think the
but
car
we've
should
got
have
the
been
papers heading your
maybe
way.
15 minutes.
Mariana Hotter and Pete Price. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning to you, it's 6:37. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on GB News, the People's Channel.
We're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio, also online, wherever you want to go, you can't get away from us. So join in, please, gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, let's have a look at the newspapers and see what they've got for you today. The Guardian says Tory MP Neil Parish faces an inquiry over the claims that he watched pornography in the House of Commons.
The Telegraph says Mr Parish has refused to quit after he lost the Conservative whip, with the Prime Minister being pressured to ask him to resign.
Tory MPs urging the MP for Tiverton and Honiton to quit now. They fear he will damage the party in the local elections. That's in the Times.
The Mail says police have been told to investigate Labour's lies over the Beergate party. The paper reports Cabinet ministers have joined calls for a new probe into the so-called scandal engulfing Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner.
Oh, it's scandal, scandal, scandal. Let's talk to broadcaster Pete Price and anthropologist Mariana Hotter. We're going to take us through the papers. Morning, both.
Morning.
Good to see you, looking spectacular.
I loved what you said about the sheets, by the way, getting away from the papers. I iron my sheets on my bed every day of my life because I always feel like when I'm getting to a bed, I'm Jane Russell and it's all crispy and... So, just thought I'd tell you.
So, a Jane Russell moment.
Never ironed a bed sheet in my life.
Me either.
Never will.
No,
life
me
is
either.
too short, Pete. Come on.
Well, I could not get into a bed with unironed sheets.
Oh, never. And I iron my underpants as well.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's in... well, there you go.
This is Irongate.
It is Irongate.
What's happening?
Marianne, Telegraph, Neil Parish.
Yes. So, I don't know, you might have missed this story. First of all, the name of this MP who was under these allegations wasn't disclosed. Now we know who it is. It's Neil Parish, the MP for Tiverton and Honiton. He wasn't going to have the whip withdrawn, which basically means that he still had his party's support. And then it turns out the whip was withdrawn a bit late in the day, let's be honest. There's speculation over whether he was showing other people the material on his phone intentionally, whether he just happened to be having a look. Now there's the suggestion maybe it was just on his phone, perfectly legitimate, it's not illegal content or anything like that, and he just accidentally pressed the wrong button, and there it was playing in the House of Commons. Well. Some people will say, let the investigation, within the parliamentary standards committees and whatnot, let that run its course, then everyone can make a decision. I think the reality is that this will be the thing that everybody is talking about on doorsteps up and down the country when, the Conservative Party person knocks on your door. You're probably either going to be talking about the cost of living crisis, Partygate and the fact that Boris is a liar, or the fact that MPs watch porn in the House of Commons. And what depths we are falling to in this country. It's just depressing.
It does feel depressing,
It is.
doesn't
I
it?
think it's dreadful. I think it's dreadful that you'd even contemplate something like that. By the way, we're paying for him to be in the House of Commons, while he's watching porn. But I don't see there's any investigation. You watch porn, he watch porn.
But maybe someone sent him a WhatsApp image and he just happened to click on it and there it is up on his phone.
Then I stand corrected. That's a very interesting point. That's an interesting point. What I can't understand is why they're not doing their work while they're in there. They know they're on camera, they know people are seeing them, and they know right now everyone's waiting to have a go,
Yeah.
Although it is a form of communication, and, I can imagine quite rightly that MPs are constantly monitoring if an email's coming up or something like that. Maybe it's something they need to know. You click on it. Yep. Could it have been an accident?
An accident, yeah.
No. Come on. There's more than one
That's a definite no.
who has enough time to, they're not staring. I'm not, leaning over, seeing what you're doing. It needs to be quite conspicuous for anyone to notice what anyone is doing on another phone, a device. And I mean, it's one of those things where this is the way that this Tory party runs. They kind of seed the suggestion that maybe there's a perfectly legitimate excuse and everyone's jumping the gun. And you kind of think, come on, common sense tells me that if you're sitting about with a suitcase full of booze, you're having a party. Something tells me if you're sitting there with something on your smartphone long enough that your colleagues around you, it's a place of work, can see what you're watching. You didn't accidentally clock it out and go, crikey,
there is a new screen cover, by the way, that you can't see somebody else's phone, which I've got one, and it's tremendous, regardless of that. So I cannot see what you are looking at on your phone. It's tremendous. It's a great... Every phone should have one.
Even if you've got one of those, though, don't be watching porn at work.
No, totally. And
you're at work.
Yeah. But you say
free time.
But you say it's the depths the Tory party has gone to, and if you've got a case full of booze, it's a party. Well, if you've got a load of beer, then it's a party as well, isn't it? If we look at the Mail, and the whole Beergate thing in the Labour Party.
And the thing that makes me cross about this Beergate thing with Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner is, fine, without getting into politics, what's good for one is good for the other. I mean, he is like a dog with a bone. He will not leave it, and rightly so.
You mean Keir Starmer?
Yes, Keir Starmer, and rightly so. But now he has got to be investigated. And now on Twitter, they'll all be saying, Tory this, Tory that. That's me. I'm not. It doesn't matter what my politics is. It's the fact of people lying. As you said before, it's getting crazy. These are people that are supposed to be running the country, and it's all falling apart. It's absolutely falling apart.
I think this is smear, this Keir Starmer thing, because it's been investigated by the police to the point that they decided there was no case to be pursued.
But wasn't that with the Tory party? Wasn't that being investigated by the police? And there was no... but they went on and on.
Well, no. That's exactly untrue.
So do you don't think it should be investigated?
They were, but the thing is about the Tory party is there's 50 fines that have been issued. Those fines are issued on the basis that they were flagrant breaches of the most serious kind. That was the description of... And they were just the ones to reach the threshold of being investigated. At the point you're issued a fine, you have guilty.
So do you not want them investigated? Do you not, Keir Starmer?
Do you not think it's fair that Keir Starmer's being investigated?
Yeah, I certainly think that the police should look into it, but the police already have. The only thing that's different about this and the story that the Mail is running is this revelation that Angela Rayner was also in the room.
Well, but they lied. They said she wasn't in the room.
They denied that she was.
But that doesn't... why lie? For arguments, to represent the story correctly, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just saying what it says in the Mail, and they've done their due diligence and checked it with their legal team or whatnot. It says it was a genuine mistake. Whoever said that she wasn't there, turns out actually she was. But the principles of the number of people in the room, the reason why they were in the room, all that hasn't changed.
Sounds very similar to me to the birthday bash.
A birthday party?
Yeah, but it wasn't, was it? It wasn't a party.
It was a party.
It was people gathering.
Was there.
It was
His
people
wife
gathering. Yes, but that's where they live.
But not in the room where you're having a work meeting. When I have a work meeting at home, my husband, the kids and the birthday cake...
So Keir Starmer swigging from a bottle of beer, Angela Rayner in the same room, people around also doing that.
Well,
apparently, allegedly
yes.
a birthday cake there as well, or a cake. That's not the same.
No, because they work together.
Well, so...
He doesn't work with his wife or his interior decorator who's choosing wallpaper, who should be... If she's working, she should be upstairs doing the wallpaper. Not downstairs chumming around with the Prime Minister when he's supposed to be at work. That is fundamentally a difference.
So she couldn't have just walked in the room, pick up a paintbrush and gone, oh, I'll have a drink while I'm here, and then go back up. I mean, it's nitpicking,
why is she there?
but it's nitpicking.
It is nitpicking, isn't it?
The rules, he's the Prime Minister.
And so has Keir Starmer broken the rules.
Boris Becker has just gone to prison for 2.5 years for breaking the law, and yet the leader of our country, the person who represents us, all our interests, the people who are now struggling at home to work out how they're going to get through a long weekend and feed the kids, those people are paying that man's salary. And he flagrantly has broken the law.
You're comparing him with Boris Becker?
I'm comparing him with any other criminal.
So if he parks on double yellow lines, he should be sacked, because that's a criminal offence.
If you do it flagrantly, if you do it more than once, if you do it with full disregard for all the people who put you in office, yes. Because don't forget, there's hundreds of thousands of families, people watching this now, who had to sit at home knowing that a loved one was dying alone or suffering alone while he was having a party.
And there was hundreds of thousands of people watching now blatantly broke the law, blatantly through lockdown. Blatantly.
But we don't applaud that.
But we're not applauding that.
But
there are people who murder people, but we're not going, oh, well, they did it, so it's all right. This is the Prime Minister of the country. The fact that we're having this...
and the
leader in waiting has just done the same thing.
Keir Starmer's the man who wants to be Prime Minister.
But no one has suggested that he broke the law.
Well, they have.
Boris Johnson... OK, they've suggested it, but he hasn't been found to have broken the law. Boris Johnson has broken the law. The police have decided. He's been issued a fine.
But can't you understand them feeling aggrieved? People like Rishi Sunak feeling very aggrieved because he just turned up to a meeting early and found that there was a birthday cake and various other things. Can't you understand them feeling aggrieved that Beergate is not being investigated?
It's been investigated to the point that they've decided there are no...
And that was the same with Number 10.
And they went on and on and on.
Yeah, and it's only because it's in London and it is Number 10, the home of government.
Because there was evidence of serious...
Once investigated,
breaches,
yes. Do you not think that Beergate should also be as similarly investigated?
Yes, I do.
Right.
So we agree on that one. We agree on that bit.
I'll tell you what then we'll look at now, just to change the tone. to make it very light-hearted,
Yeah.
in the Star, mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Pete, you've got to be nice to the mother-in-law.
How can... Well, first of all, why is the Pope getting involved with mother-in-laws? That I find amazing. Great story. The greatest comic, Les Dawson, wouldn't have had an act without a mother-in-law.
No, he wouldn't.
No.
I, as a comic, used to wear a magnificent ring, a diamond ring, and I used to say, "Do you like the ring?" That was my mother-in-law. She said to me, "Here's £5,000. When I die, get me a nice stone." I thought, why wait? That was the gag I used to do. But they are the backbone of every marriage. But if you marry into the possessive mother-in-law with the son, and the possessive mother-in-law with the daughter, you've got war in there. But you're the backbone, ladies, wherever you are.
Do you think the dragon mother-in-law is a real person?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Or have we just made her up along the years?
Oh, yes. I know two. I'll name them. No.
No. What about your mother-in-law?
Fantastic woman, I love her.
You see, that's
mine
good.
was too.
I'm really grateful.
That saved a lot of hassle.
I think that it can make a real difference to the, to the quality of your relationship with your partner, because if you've got this kind of element that is not saying it's all from the mother-in-law, it might be your partner. It might just be the whole family dynamic. But if you get on, it makes life a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think they are vilified. I think fundamentally, I know I'm going to bring it on a bit of a downer again, it's part of society's misogyny.
Oh, come on. Some mother-in-laws are horrific.
Yeah, but we never say it about fathers, do we?
There's not this kind of trope of the villain. It goes along with the evil mother-in-law, the evil stepmother, murdering children, being nasty and horrible, and you kind of think...
But that goes back centuries.
But we're doing such a disservice to women who work incredibly hard for their families.
A lot of families wouldn't survive without mother-in-laws, for babysitting, for getting shopping, and they're joking apart. They are the backbone of an awful lot of
Sava says, morning to you, Sava, says, I have the most wonderful relationship with my mother-in-law. She's my best friend, my confidant, and best nanny to my daughter. So there you go. So that's nice.
That's nice.
But why the Pope is talking about it, we can't figure it out.
Maybe he hasn't even got a mother-in-law.
Maybe he's thinking
maybe he
of
wants
changing
one.
his job.
He has said, and I think he put it beautifully, he said, remember, your mother-in-law is the mother of the person you love. And so be nice to her. It helps things go along. I think that's
a fair point.
That's a lovely way to finish. I presume we're finished.
We're finished.
Yes.
Get out. Get out. Take your diamonds with you. Pete Price, Mary Anna Hotter, thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you later on. Now...
Are you planning a bank holiday getaway? I am. There were queues as early as 3 a.m, apparently, at Manchester Airport yesterday, as some were looking to travel for the first time since COVID-19.
Yes, it's thought 17 million people are going to hit the road over this long weekend. It was 22 million last time, so it's going down a bit.
Yeah, who else would we turn to but Simon Calder for his advice? Hello there. Good morning, Simon. Hi, lovely to talk to you.
Good morning from Funchal, Madeira, beautiful Portuguese island. I'm here for the Advantage Travel Conference, the first proper travel conference for well over 2 years. Hundreds of delegates here, it's a real sense of things getting back to something like normal, but exactly as you say. There's also kind of most of yesterday evening was spent saying, well, I spent 5 minutes getting through Gatwick. It took me an hour and a half to get through Birmingham, Manchester. I paid for special security clearance and it still took an hour and a quarter. So things aren't quite back to normal. And of course, if you're travelling around the UK, that's going to be a challenge. Just a friendly reminder that the West Coast Main Line, which runs from Scotland, from northwest England and from the West Midlands to London Euston. Well, it's not doing that. London Euston once again closed until Tuesday morning.
How can they do that, Simon? How can they close that line and close Euston down for the second bank holiday weekend in a row? That seems absolutely crackers.
Well, they say, and I've talked about they being Network Rail, the people who look after the infrastructure, they say a couple of things. First of all, this was planned years ago, and actually for really big pieces of work. This is all to do with new track, new signalling in Watford. There's work going on in Wembley as well to speed up journeys and make life better and reduce the number of signal failures that you get. They say we have to plan these things well in advance. You can't suddenly say, OK, we'll do it Tuesday to Friday instead, even though, of course, since COVID, there has been a collapse in the number of season ticket commuters, and the strongest numbers that you're seeing are at weekends, particularly bank holiday weekends, and particularly it's the time when an awful lot of your viewers, Stephen, will be might be the only times that they ever use the trains to go to see loved ones or to go on a day out or whatever. And as soon as they turn around and they want to go to London, they can't.
I'm going to go away and drive it, actually, quite a long drive ahead of me today. What are the roads going to be like? Do we estimate that they are going to be pretty chocker as well?
Well, actually, probably yesterday evening, I'm hearing, was about as bad as it's going to get, except, well, I mean, I would, forgive me, Anne, if I were going, for example, from where you are to the West Country, I would get up and leave now, although I realise that would be quite awkward from a programming point of view. If you can get ahead of the rush from, well, both the South East England, where you are, and the West Midlands, down to the West Country, that would be really handy. If otherwise, by about 11 o'clock, you're going to find that there's probably really heavy traffic, in which case you might want to leave it till 5 or 6 o'clock this evening to head down. But of course, people want to make the most of their bank holiday weekend. Perfectly understandable. Although we have got quite a lot of other bank holidays coming down the track, thanks to Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee.
Yeah, well, that's at least hopefully we'll celebrate those a little bit closer to home. Simon, thank you very much. Enjoy Madeira.
I will. It's a beautiful island, and just for the record, I'm extremely fond of my lovely mother-in-law.
Oh, beautiful. You're playing it safe there.
Yeah.
You're playing it safe, but
That's
quite
lovely.
right too.
Enjoy
Simon,
Madeira.
thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant.
Yes, I think mother-in-laws should be celebrated, really. But I don't see why we can't have a bit of a laugh as well.
Yeah.
Well, you know, why not?
Well, it's just traditional too, isn't it? I mean,
It's a bit of tradition.
But there were some very unkind mother-in-law jokes. Mind you, most mother-in-law... I think Les Dawson had a mother-in-law at one point who actually gave an interview saying, I really don't mind being the butt of his jokes.
Yeah. One day I will dance on your grave, said my mother-in-law. I said, I hope you do. I'll be buried at sea. That's a Les Dawson classic.
That's a typical Les Dawson.
Very good too. If you've got any decent mother-in-law jokes that are clean, send them through gbviews@gbnews.uk.
We'll be back in a moment.
Hello, a very good morning to you. This bank holiday weekend starts off chilly for many, but with plenty of sunshine across much of the UK, but not for all. It is going to turn increasingly damp in the north. That's because an area of low pressure is now approaching. The weather fronts associated with it have been bringing thicker cloud into the northwest and outbreaks of rain. And that's how things start, really, for much of the UK. It's bright for eastern and southern Scotland. Plenty of sunshine for England and Wales, despite the chill in the air. But in the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, rain soon turns up, and that rain becomes more persistent and in places heavy, particularly over western hills and coasts of Scotland. Spreads to eastern and southern Scotland, parts of the far north of England through the afternoon. But away from that, we keep the sunny spells, and actually it's a warmer day compared to yesterday, 17, perhaps even 18 Celsius. Certainly notice the difference in the east of England. But during Saturday night, we're going to see those spells of rain push south into northern and western England, Wales as well. Again, some heavy bursts at times, but increasingly that rain is becoming more fragmented as it moves south. Nevertheless, the extensive cloud across the UK by dawn tomorrow means that it's going to be a frost-free start. Temperatures in some places hold up at 10 Celsius. And in the far southeast, I think it'll stay dry through much of the day. Scotland and Northern Ireland also brightening up, drying up, some bright spells coming through, albeit with a few showers here and there. Likewise, eventually for Northern England. But elsewhere, well, we keep the dreary skies, we keep the damp conditions. That'll impact the temperatures, just 11 Celsius there in Cardiff, 11 in Plymouth, I think 13 or 14 further north, feeling a bit more pleasant. And Bank Holiday Monday itself doesn't look too bad. I think there'll be sunny spells, but a scattering of showers. It'll feel a little warmer again, highs of 16 Celsius.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Tory MP Neil Parish is facing calls to resign after being accused of watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Saturday, April the 30th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We are live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, on your radio and online. And we are the People's Channel.
Coming up this morning, porn in Parliament. MP Neil Parish is under investigation for allegedly watching porn on his phone. But he rejects calls to stand down, claiming it was an accident. What do you think?
Meanwhile, the government's introducing new plans to protect victims of domestic abuse. We'll speak to the Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding, Rachel McLean, later on this hour, about the proposal, as well as getting her take on the scandals in Westminster at the moment.
Fallen from grace, three-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker is slammed for apparently not showing any remorse after being jailed for 2.5 years over a bankruptcy scam.
The Pope has called on couples to be kinder to their mothers-in-law, and TV personality Kim Woodburn will be joining us later on with her cleaning tips. So, any of your thoughts on any of that, we would love to hear from you. GBviews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBnews.
Yeah, do get in touch because hearing from you is what makes us the People's Channel, actually. And it's lovely to hear your views and some of your jokes and thoughts. We've got lots of mother-in-law jokes coming in, thank you very much. Yeah, all of your thoughts on all of the subjects that we're talking about today.
My mother-in-law asked, if you don't like me, why do you take me on holiday with you? I told her, so I don't have to kiss you goodbye.
Oh, dear.
That's just come in from my other half.
Oh, no, really? Oh, there's a worry. The Pope has apparently
you're
said
in trouble.
that we must be nice to our mothers-in-law. He said, remember, your mother-in-law is the mother of the person you love. And so, look after them, be nice to them, understand them. Could you with yours? I don't know. It'd be nice to hear your views.
Gary in Scotland says, I took my mother-in-law to the zoo, but they wouldn't take her.
Yes. Why is it we get at mothers-in-law, we don't seem to get at fathers-in-law at all? But they're usually looked upon as a bit of a treasure, aren't
Yes. Well, they are.
they? Yeah. So let us know, what's your family like? What's your mother-in-law like, truly? Get in touch. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Like I said, it's your views that make us the People's Channel.
I like the fact we can have a laugh, though.
Oh, yes.
The mother-in-law, laughing at... I think if you really get on with your mother-in-law, that's when you can make a mother-in-law joke, because it makes it funnier.
Don't know about that.
Really?
I'll be a mother-in-law one day, won't I?
Yes, you will.
Hopefully, if my boys ever get their act together. Yeah. That's weird.
Many times over.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be weird.
I'll be a dragon.
I will be a dragon.
You see, there you go.
It's my job.
And you want good enough for your boys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Now, to move on, I mean, that's why it's lovely to talk about the lighter things, but there are so many serious news stories around. For instance, the Tory MP under investigation for allegedly watching pornography on his phone in the Commons chamber says he opened it accidentally.
Yeah, that's Neil Parish, who's rejected calls to stand down as an MP. He has had the whip suspended yesterday. He's a select committee chair and he said he would be continuing his duties as an MP whilst cooperating with investigators.
Now, this is fascinating because he himself was on GB News 3 days ago before we knew who it was we were talking about. And this is what he told us about the incident.
I mean, I think the Whip's office will do a thorough investigation and we will wait and see that result. And I think, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken.
I mean, I guess he's not wrong in what he said, but the fact that it was him...
Yes, none of us knew at that point that it was him. He knew it was him, and yet he chose to do a TV interview on that subject without actually saying, it was me. What do you think he should have done? Well, Dr. John Coulter joins us now. He's a political commentator. A very good morning to you. Hello again. What do you think of that? I mean, I have to say it's left so many people at GB News absolutely gobsmacked.
Well, good morning, Anne. Good morning, Stephen. I think whenever we take Partygate, the sleaze tsunami, now we've got Porngate. Well, the reality is that British parliamentary democracy is fast becoming the laughingstock of Western Europe. In fact, I would now compare British parliamentary democracy to the famous 1930s comedy slapstick film by Laurel and Hardy, Another Fine Mess. And that's the only way we can look at it. What we really need to have happen in our election system is for the moral compass of society to be rebooted. And what I mean by that is, I think it has to move. We are the people's channel here at GB News, so therefore the people should decide, not allow these MPs to decide whether they should resign or whether they should stay on or whether there should be an inquiry. So I'm going to put forward my solutions as a man of the people. Basically, we're talking about an introduction of an Australian-style compulsory voting, where we have turnouts in constituencies, if you take a look at Australia, somewhere in the region of 92 to 94%. I think if MPs and elected representatives knew that constituents were really going to turn out in vast numbers and decide on them, they would buck up their act. Because the big danger is if these porn gates, if these party gates are allowed to continue, you're going to get the electorate turning off the ballot box, and maybe we'll see elected representatives only elected maybe 15-20% of the vote from that point of view, because we're rapidly coming to a cliff edge in terms of public confidence in our parliamentary system. And secondly, I just want to throw this into the mix, and I know the snowflake and the woke brigade are going to be up in arms whenever I say this. Maybe the time is coming where if you need to be an elected representative, you need a license to be a public representative. I know that's contentious, I know that's controversial, but we've got to do something to clean up the acts.
How would you go about getting a licence? I mean, because, obviously the concern with that would be, well, who regulates who gets a licence?
Yes, I think you're looking at a completely new, independent regulatory body. We have them in health, we have them in education. Why not have them in politics? Yes, I know that there are regulatory privilege bodies within the House of Commons and here in Northern Ireland at Stormont. But that's self-regulation. We need independent regulation of our elected representatives. And that's not just at the Houses of Parliament. It's right through council, right through everywhere else. For example, I grew up in a farming parish. So I know the front end of a cow from the back end of a cow. But that doesn't make me a qualified vet. I need to have a licence to be able to be a qualified vet. And I'm
certainly, if you look at
I really do need a licence to be an MP. It's getting ridiculous.
It does. I think most people watching at the moment will totally agree. It is getting ridiculous. What the heck? You can't turn to the Prime Minister, I guess, to clean up Parliament, can you? Or even to clean up his own party. Even if you're a fan of Boris, you accept that he does things in a very unusual way. He's broken rules in the past. He has his own way of life. He was certainly the first Prime Minister ever to live in Number 10 with his girlfriend rather than his wife. So he's not the one to clean up even the Tory party, is he? You're explaining yourself, there's nobody to trust other than an entirely new body, but that would take years to set up.
Well, we can already start this process, Anne. Basically, I would say the faith communities in the United Kingdom, they can take a lead. I mean, take a look at the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. He recently entered the political debate with a really hard-hitting Easter speech and some really good comments about the situation in Ukraine. Now, if Justin Welby can lead the way, all the representatives could get together, an interfaith forum to lead the way to reset the moral compass. Because I think we're looking at this from the wrong angle. We're looking at it from the Prime Minister down, whereas we should be looking from the ground up. And we, the people of the United Kingdom, we, the people who elect these people into power, we should be the ones who have the control of the ballot box, not the people who take the results of the ballot box and interpret their own way.
Look, it's interesting that you talk about the moral compass sort of going astray, but we need to look back in history as well, don't we? And when a party has been in power for a long time, of whatever colour that party is, there does reach a point where these things start to escalate. Maybe it's they just sort of rest on their laurels a little bit, and the members or parliamentary members do. I mean, so this happens. You know, it happens in a cycle. It happens every time, doesn't it? I mean, maybe the only reset we need is when we have a general election.
Maybe we need to look then, Stephen, at the, say, the American presidential system, where you can only serve 2 terms, 8 years. Maybe we should put a time limit on the number of years that an MP, a councillor, so on and so forth, can serve in their respective parliaments and councils. Is that an idea where we're bringing in fresh blood from that aspect of things? I also think as well we need to look at the voting age. Perhaps one way of looking at this is through maybe our schools and colleges and introducing citizenship studies where people are taught how to be proper citizens in society, and that we lower the voting age in the United Kingdom, perhaps down as low as 14, because young people will be mature, responsible politically, and they will be able to influence MPs and councillors. Radical thinking, but something urgent needs to be done about this sleaze tsunami that is inflicting our nation.
Sleaze tsunami.
Interesting. John Coulter, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. What a load of interesting points John raises. I mean, certainly on lowering the voting age, I'm dead set against that.
I think it should be lowered to 16.
Do you? See,
I come across you speak to a lot of young people. I come across a lot of 16-year-olds who would love to vote, who've got strong political views, and just because they're young doesn't mean they're wrong.
No, it doesn't. But also, they're not actually adults at that point, and we're just changing the law now so that they can't get married. You can't get married till you're 18.
But in Scotland, for the referendum vote, they lowered the voting age to 16, and there was a whole generation of young Scots who really were motivated, highly motivated, who learned more about the subject and really wanted to vote. I thought that was an extraordinary thing.
You see, no, I disagree on that. I think there's not enough maturity, and I think there should be a point.
But maturity doesn't always come with age,
No,
does
it doesn't.
I mean, there are a lot of really stupid people who are entitled to vote because they are adults.
Yes, well, that's absolutely right. But I do think, you know, if we're setting things at 18, like marriage, like drinking alcohol, like but, you know, if that's the set-off point, then that should be the same for voting as well, in my view. But the licence
idea is interesting.
My only concern with that would be, you know, who sets the rules for getting approved.
But you do, as John said, you have authorities that do things that oversee professions and things like that. Why shouldn't it be seen as a profession for which you need some sort of a qualification?
Now qualification would be different.
Well, the qualification would give you the licence then, I suppose, wouldn't it?
I don't know. It's interesting, though, isn't it? I'd love to know what as John was saying, you know, it's down to the people, we the people. So let us know what you think.
I think there's no doubt we the people deserve better than these headlines that are being churned up again and again from the House of Commons and from our MPs. It's not right, is it? As he said, it was a tsunami of sleaze. That's not right that we should be served by people like that. It really isn't.
My only concern is, as I said before, you know, you think back to the end of the last Tory government when there was all the family values issue, and there was a lot of funny stuff going on.
But do you remember John Major said we must get back to basics? That was the big phrase that was being used at the same time that he was having an affair with Edwina Currie.
Yes. And, you know, our very own David Mellor, who we have on the show, was called a bit of scandal and all this. I mean, there was loads of it going on. Yeah. So you do...
There was a period during the John Major premiership where minister after minister after minister after minister had to resign because of some sort of horrible, sleazy...
It was often affairs and things.
Yes,
yeah,
but it was the lying about them and things like that, wasn't it?
So I don't know. It's interesting times. I'm sort of thinking whether if there was a reset, if the reset button was a general election, whoever you want to get in at the next election, then it does that freshen up everyone's mind a little bit? I don't feel like having another election, but you never know.
I think a lot of people would quite welcome another election quite soon now, because it would give you the chance, and it may actually mean that each party had to brush up their act, knowing that they would be under such severe scrutiny.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? GBViews at GBnews.uk. I'd love to know what you think about that one.
Now, let's talk about Ukraine. As Russia escalates its invasion of Ukraine, the Foreign Office has announced that the UK will send war crimes experts to investigate atrocities committed by the Russians, presumably.
Now, this all comes as two British charity workers have reportedly been captured by the Russian military. It's understood the volunteers, who are Paul Yuri and Dylan Healy, were detained earlier this week at a checkpoint in the south of Ukraine.
And then, meanwhile, NATO's Deputy Secretary-General warns that it could be years before the Ukraine war is over, as Britain sends 8,000 troops to Eastern Europe.
Well, let's talk to former military and intelligence officer Mike Tapp, who joins us now. Mike, good to see you this morning. But what's your assessment of where we are? Because it's a very grim picture. We know Russia is regrouping in the east of the country, but we don't quite know what's going to happen next with that. But from all sides now, we're hearing escalation of sending British troops into the region. We're hearing about many leaders saying this could go on for years and years. It's a very depressing picture.
It is. This isn't going to be a quick conflict, unfortunately. The deployments that we're seeing from our armed forces, I see as really positive, and they send really a clear message to Vladimir Putin. So what we've got is an exercise in Finland, Exercise Arrow, which sends a really clear message about their right to decide whether they join NATO, and it has nothing to do with Russia, and they do not have a say in the future of Finland or Sweden or Ukraine. There's Operation Hedgehog, which is in Estonia and Latvia, and that demonstrates just how serious we are about the defence of our NATO partners and the borders. So it's good to see, in my view, a sort of continued united and robust NATO, which sends a really clear message to Vladimir Putin that he's not to go any further and escalate this.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary business and a very expensive one as well, and we are now told it's going to go on for a long time. But I wonder, when we occasionally get assessments that say NATO is united and seems to have a plan, and the Russians are being chaotic and things haven't gone according to their plan. Is that how you read it as well, or is that wishful thinking on our part?
Well, Vladimir Putin would not have expected this conflict to have gone on for so long. I expect he would have wanted his forces to roll into Kiev within 10 days. But there is a robust Ukrainian defence, and a lot of that is aided by NATO bolstering its weapons supplies and sending aid in terms of money, weapons, and humanitarian aid. So, you know, we do have a united NATO. There are obviously going to be some tensions around spending, etc., and who's sending what and how much and how fast. But in general, considering NATO is made up of so many nations, we are very united, and the Russian response has been, you know, weak really, and the Ukrainians are showing real strength and resolve.
How much of a difficult situation are we in the West, in that Putin is proving to be so unpredictable?
He is unpredictable, and we don't know what his next moves are. We do have the best intelligence agencies in the world, but we can never be certain, which is why I think the exercises and deployments we're seeing into our NATO partners and Finland are really important, because it not only shows that strength and sends that message, but it helps us form not just a deterrence force, but something more defensive. So if we do start to see build-up of Russian troops on other borders, we have something there already in place.
OK. Mike Tapp, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do stay with us, because we've got plenty more to come, including all of your views, but lots of weekend sports stories as well with Aidan McGee. That's in a couple of moments.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 7:21. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio, and online.
Sorry, I just had to laugh because we've just had lovely Robin in with our GB views coming in. They're coming in thick and fast now. Thank you so much. We are the People's Channel. So we've got your views here. But I just caught this one very quickly because they were talking about whether you iron your bed sheets or not. And Doreen in Berkshire says, I iron everything, from sheets, duvets, even my husband's socks. The joke in the family is he's the only person that has a crease in his socks. I'm 88 years young. and would not dream of putting something on with creases in it. You're 88 and you're still doing all the ironing? No!
Good for you.
Sit down, put your feet up.
Good for you, Doreen. That's what I say.
Can't believe it.
Makes you happy. Nothing. Ooh, a pair of iron socks. Lovely. I don't iron my socks, but lovely. I fancy a bit
New
of
socks, I agree. Brand new,
Yeah.
so that they are lovely and flat. I agree, but I wouldn't iron them.
No. I see what Aidan McGee irons. Morning.
Morning, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right.
There are some big sports stories around, and the first thing we're going to ask you is whether you iron your bed.
Yeah, well, it's an important question on this. Let's deal with it first. The bed sheets definitely ironed, because I sometimes find that they can be a little bit damp even after a tumble dry. I think the iron just gets rid of that last bit of moisture, doesn't it? I pay someone to do it, I must admit, but I still have, but it's still done nonetheless.
That is the answer.
And then what was that on socks? I agree with you. Fresh out of the packet, you might iron them. But after that, no, just stick them all together. It's just pairing them off. That's the only problem, isn't it? You lose them after a few weeks.
Yeah.
On to sport, shall we?
On to sport. Boris Becker.
This transcends sport.
He was ironing £20 notes.
Oh, okay, well, 50s probably.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a fall from grace that's in the making for 20 years. He was told that he hadn't heeded the warnings yesterday by Judge Deborah Taylor. Don't forget, he was declared bankrupt in Germany in 2002, 20 years ago. And the full scale of his excesses is coming to the fore now. He once owed £54 million for a start. He's cleared some of that. But when you consider some of the excesses in his life, I mean, he had 2 divorces for a start, going back to the 90s. The first one was in the late 90s. He finished playing in 1999. His wealth dropped substantially. I see this a lot with sporting personalities. You know, they struggle. They know when the income's going to drop, but they can't adapt their lifestyle accordingly. When their tap turns off, they're still getting helicopters to go and tear to Harrods.
You can sort of understand it when you've been a millionaire from the age of 17.
Oh, without doubt. That's a really good point.
So he's never been an adult that's had to count his money.
He earned his first £1 million in 1985 at the age of 17. There was no evidence back then that he was mismanaging his money. He's admitted since then that he's been a bit less than frugal with his wealth. But you think how much £1 million was in 1985? I mean, that would buy you most property in most parts of London at that point. It wouldn't get you a shoebox these days in many places. However, but he will serve half of the jail term on licence. I could see him working again. I don't think this crime would necessarily preclude him from working in future. I think it's certainly not on the same level as some other crimes that would end that argument indefinitely.
Interesting, because, I mean, I've always liked him when he's on the BBC, for instance, commenting on Wimbledon, particularly.
Yeah.
He's got a lovely sense of humour, and he is acknowledged as a champ, obviously.
Yeah. Did you interview him back in the day, Anne?
Yes, I've interviewed him several times, and he's always been on good form and is very, very
he's
funny.
a personality, isn't he?
But the BBC, for instance, I think will have to worry about whether they ever...
I think they'll have a decision to make, I do, but I just think people like him, and I think it's a crime that it's reckless. And as far as we know, no one's lost out yet. They will probably see their money somewhere further down the line.
Well, doubt it.
Yeah, mate, look, with the sums involved, maybe not, but he claims to have paid some of it back. But we see that, as I say, we see this quite a lot. I mean, look at this, £22,000 a month he was paying for his rent in Wimbledon. He had school fees to pay, going back decades. I know.
Bankrupt.
No, I mean, lots of people go through that sort of thing.
And there were, as I say, there were two. The first divorce was back in 1995, so this has been.
It's not very credible excuses, though. Is it?
No, well, even if
he wrote a book, if he wrote an autobiography, Life in Prison, why I got there, all the rest of it, that would sell.
Yeah, it probably would. Yeah, but there was £1 million. So he didn't declare all his assets. You're meant to do that. Yeah. When you declared as bankrupt. I mean, it was a £3 million estate in Marbella. There was a £1 million home in Germany.
He deliberately kept
He concealed it. Yeah, exactly. And there will have been, who knows who his creditors were? They could have been people who were really desperate for the money. We assume that because of the sums involved, they're all rich people and they're banks, but not necessarily. I see it in football a lot where you have administration and you have clubs trying to get out of it, and some of the creditors are people like St John's Ambulance. Yeah. And you don't really... And others as well, individuals or people who run corner shops or whatever. Yeah. You know, people who rely on that, who were promised that money and didn't get it.
Talking of football, what's going on? Who's going to buy Chelsea?
Well, the waters have been muddied significantly as of yesterday. The Ineos chairman from left field has made a £4.5 billion offer for the club, and this was after just hours earlier it was assumed that the other bid by Todd Burley was the preferred one. So he's the owner of LA Dodgers. His bid is believed to be worth around £2.7 billion, and then suddenly Jim Ratcliffe comes in at the 11th hour with 4.25 billion. Now, the issue here is that 2 or 3 other bids got stood down yesterday and told they're unsuccessful, but then Ratcliffe's come in yesterday, 3 weeks after a month after the deadline. So the deadline was
making a bid of what, 4.25 million?
No, billion.
Billion.
Yeah, billion. So he's pledged.
He is British.
He is. So this is his thing. He's saying he probably has come in. See, if he used to buy the club, the diligence isn't an issue because he did it 3 years ago because he was going to buy Chelsea then. Yeah. Nadine Dorries very chillingly, I don't know if you noticed this week, said Chelsea are on borrowed time. They've got to get this done within a few weeks. Now, this is a problem here.
So he's also
coming late.
Approved.
I would say that's a good way of putting it because he doesn't need 3 or 4 weeks to inspect the book because he's done it. The books haven't changed dramatically since 2019 because we've had COVID since then. And so he's also pledged to deliver on a new stadium. The new stadium is a huge, huge thing for Chelsea, £1 billion that will cost.
Who would the fans prefer?
I think the fans now would probably prefer Jim Ratcliffe because he has pledged to put in £1.75 billion over 10 years on players alone. The rest of it would go to victims of war. So we'll see where it goes. But, yeah, it's got to be done quickly because the government are getting fed up with this. And Abramovich said in the week that he would like an extra £500 million to go to charity to prove that, to kind of smooth off...
Saying the right things, isn't he?
He's saying the right things, yeah. And don't forget, he's not seeing any of this money. He's letting this club go. He's made a few quid out of it down the years as well. Let's not forget, he's had it for 20 years and it's done a lot for his reputation. And so we'll see where it goes. But I think you'll see some movement on that in the next week or so. But the interesting thing about Jim Ratcliffe is that he's a massive Manchester United fan, and so he was involved in Team Sky. He said he was never going to buy a Premier League club, and then so he bought a First Division club in France. He bought Team Sky from Team Sky. So he's been running that.
Has that been done before, where you get somebody who's the owner of one club but a massive fan of another?
Yeah, I mean, I know a story from when I was younger. The guy who bought my local club, Gillingham, was a massive fan of their rivals, Millwall. I used to go to Millwall games with him. He kept it quiet, though.
I suppose it's just business.
Apart from when I was on GBNews.
It's all about the money. Lovely. Thank you, Aidan. We'll catch up with you later on.
Money? I mean, huge amounts of money.
Oh, it's a lot of money. Derek. Morning, Derek. He says, I love my mother-in-law.
Oh, good.
It's her daughter I can't stand.
Oh. Oh, dear. We're talking about mothers-in-law because the Pope, of all people, has come out and said, be nice to your mother-in-law. She's the mother of the person you love. We need to be lovely to mothers-in-law.
Yeah. Mark says, how many mothers-in-law does it take to change a light bulb? 1. She just holds it up there and waits for the world to revolve around her.
Right. OK. Look, it's naughty that we're laughing at mother-in-law jokes.
No, but it's
the Pope would not approve.
It's good. I like it. Tony says, my mother-in-law never says she's coming round, she just turns up. Mind you, I can sense it every time. The birds stop flying and the mice throw themselves on the traps.
Please, no, this is terrible.
Jay... Mariana Hotter's in the wings, not happy. James said, had the Pope met my mother-in-law, he definitely wouldn't have made that comment. The softest thing about her was her teeth.
The softest thing about her was her teeth?
Yeah.
Please. This is terrible.
I love all of this.
We're also talking about whether or not you iron your bed sheets. Gail in Crossgates, morning Gail, says, what's an iron? I can't remember the last time I used one. Bedding creases come out from the warmth of your body.
No, they don't. What nonsense. What nonsense.
Laughter off.
Yes. Debbie changes her bed every week, and the pillow protectors, and I iron them. I know people's beds are disgusting. How lovely it is to sleep in a clean bed. Yes, I would agree.
It's funny, do you know, when you stay in a posh hotel, or in my case, a posh cruise ship, every day when you come back, the bed looks completely newly made. Absolutely gorgeous, crisp, white. And you think, I'm going to hang around and see what they do, because do they change the bed sheets every day, or what do they do? And I think they take a decision as to whether the bed sheets need to be changed or not. But if they don't, they have a water spray that's got some sort of beautiful aromatic thingy in it, scent, and they spray very gently, and then they do that. Keep doing that until everything looks really...
And then do like hospital corners and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it looks as though they're totally new, when sometimes they are not totally new. That's the trick, apparently.
Oh, checking them for marks. Anyway. Anyway...
For those of you listening on the radio, that was a quizzical look from me for a very strange remark from Stephen there.
Yes, I don't know where I was going with that one, but stay with us. We've got plenty more to come. We'll take you through the papers in a couple of minutes.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
You're watching the People's Channel, don't you know? We're all about you and everything you want to talk about, but we call ourselves Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yes, that's right. That's how we're known. And we're live right across the country, on your TV, on your radio and online. Get the GB News app. You can take us with you wherever you go. Should we take a look at today's front pages? The Guardian says Tory MP Neil Parish faces an inquiry over the claims that he watched pornography in the House of Commons chamber.
Tory MPs are urging Neil Parish to quit now. They fear he'll damage the party in the local elections. That's on the front of the Times.
The Mail says police have been told to investigate Labour's lies over the Beergate party. The paper reports that Cabinet ministers have now joined calls for a new probe into the so-called scandal engulfing Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner.
OK, let's chat through some of those then with broadcaster Pete Price and anthropologist Mariana Hotter. Morning.
Good morning.
Express, Marianne, and the cost of living. They've got a new survey out, a new poll, and cost of living is very top of the agenda.
Absolutely, and entirely understandably. So obviously we've got the local elections coming up. People are canvassing, knocking on doors. You're getting all those leaflets through your doors and whatnot.
Oh, that's non-stop, that.
Well, I guess that's good, isn't it? You're supposed to read them.
I've only had one leaflet. The Green Party, one leaflet.
Oh, I get loads. I just think, what a waste of paper.
Yeah, it is.
Awful. Can't Google it.
Well, you can. Are you going to?
Do you think anything on one of those bits of paper would change your mind about who to vote for?
Do you know what? So I've got a postal vote, and I actually sat and read their little leaflets and genuinely made a decision.
Really?
I kind of went, oh, maybe it's this one or maybe it's this one, and went for the one who's I thought had written a better leaflet.
Right. Oh, well, there you go.
Well, you're going for the better layout artist then, are you?
No.
Sorry.
Content
content
rather than
good.
design.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the Express has done a survey about what people think are the most important issues. So everyone loves a survey, doesn't it? Because it sort of boils down what the nation thinks, assuming that the survey is, representative. So key topics of the day. cost of living crisis, 72% of people. I mean, it's looming large. And it hasn't even, like, let's be honest, those energy price hikes only came in at the start of this month. So it's
hasn't even hit
the screw hasn't even turned yet. NHS capacity, bear in mind we're going into summer, so to some extent that seasonal impact is going to be less. But again, the autumn looks a bit grim already, doesn't it? The economy, the Ukraine war, how we're going to care for our elderly and pay for that. Freedom of speech, randomly. 53% of people are worried about freedom of speech.
Oh, well, that's interesting, though, isn't it? It's interesting. People are feeling that they need to be able to air their views.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think freedom of speech has gone out of the window, and I now don't do a phone-in anymore because I can't. You have to think of every word that comes out of your head. We've nearly had rows back there, just getting the paper story sorted. I have to speak my mind.
Rows,
well, no, for 50 years. No, for 50 years, I have spoke about freedom of speech without crossing the line, and now you don't even know where the line is anymore.
No.
But I think it's right to be mindful of what we say and question those assumptions. You know, some of the language... all it takes is to watch one of those old TV shows that everyone thought was hilarious 15 years ago, and you watch it now and your jaw's on the floor going, wait, hang on a minute, there's jokes about people of colour, there's jokes about women, there's jokes about all sorts of things that just wouldn't be acceptable now, and rightly so. Don't make a joke about someone in a wheelchair. In what world is that funny? I mean, to be fair, you guys are making jokes about mother-in-laws. I don't think that's funny either.
No, yeah, we tell you.
No, it's outrageous. Well, it's misogynistic, isn't it? It's just...
See, you're wrong there. You just said puff. You can't say puff. Puffing and puffing.
No. I'll be getting cancelled.
So, that's not the same as freedom of speech.
No, it's not.
But anyway...
But it's very interesting that Express readers feel that that's under threat, obviously, in some way.
You know, everyone's having a go about the cost of living, and rightly so. But we have been through an unbelievable pandemic which has taken chunks of money and altered everything. And people are jumping in and putting their prices up all the time in every walk of life because they can now, because of the pandemic, and also because they need to. Yeah. So, you know, they're always blaming a government, whichever government's in, they're always blaming it. But, you know, you're not going to stop companies putting prices up.
No.
What I think it is, and I think the reason that I blame the government is because at that point, you've got these market economics changing prices. You know, we've got Brexit, we've got international supply chains being disrupted because of the pandemic, because of war in Ukraine, all the rest of it. But that's where you need the government and good financial policies to balance the impact on us. You know,
but there's an awful lot to balance. There's an awful lot to balance right now.
But it's all well and good sort of saying...
What I would ask you then on that front is, what does that mean? How do you balance that to give people more money in their pocket?
So you don't prioritise trying to bring down the UK national debt. You go, you know, we save up, we have these robust policies for the rainy day. Crikey, folks, it is raining right now. So you spend. You don't raise things like national insurance, which hit everybody, regardless of whether you're earning $7.50 an hour or £70 an hour.
But when you look at the things like the national debt, which is all dull and boring for most of us to even try and think about, we're spending billions of pounds every week on servicing that debt. So you want to bring it down in order to then have more money in your pocket.
But do you want that to be brought down by removing access to families for support? Do you want to bring it down by making people queue up for food banks? Do you want to bring it down by saying, sorry, your elderly mother is going to get one 15-minute visit a week because otherwise we'd have to actually raise your taxes?
But it's not a direct correlation between... It's not as simple as that, is it?
I think to some extent... I mean, unless you really want to get into the nitty-gritty and become, you know, the head of the Bank of England, yes, it is. You choose the political party who is going to represent your interests. And I find it hilarious. I was saying to Pete just earlier, I don't understand how we are in a world, some kind of strange parallel universe, where someone who is earning the minimum wage in one of those northern cities, pick Bolton, for example, saying, oh, yeah, Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, all that lot, yeah, they're on my side. They're the people who care about what matters to me. What world do we live in?
You mentioned
these people who are leading our government now have the support of the British public. It baffles me.
You mentioned food banks. The problem now is food banks are struggling because people are now hanging on to what they've got and are not putting in to food banks. Charities are struggling, but this is an awful lot to do with the pandemic.
I know, but the government
an awful lot to do with the
do
pandemic.
something about it.
Don't you think
but the money doesn't grow on trees. You can't just pluck it.
Don't you think they will come a general election through sheer political expediency? They will do something to make us feel warm and cuddly just before a general election?
Well, maybe, but I don't think lots of families can wait that long because people are really suffering, really struggling. And the bottom line is those older people who are looking at the last few years of their life, those kids who are coming in and living in real poverty, it changes their life chances.
Scrap all the green levies then?
No. Keep them because that is what ensures a better future for those kids.
Maybe so does balancing the economy.
But maybe what you should do is actually tax those who can afford it. People with massive landed assets, they don't get inheritance tax. The things where people actually have
inheritance tax.
In the back.
Why should I'm towards the end of my life. I've got a few bob, and I've earned every penny, and I've paid tax every day of my life. Why should I pay death duties? Give me one reason why I should pay death duties.
Because you care about the next generation.
No, I've cared about the next generation. I've cared about the next generation by paying my tax. By paying my tax, I pay my tax every single week, and right through the pandemic. And I was one of the 5.5 million people that got nothing from the government. Nobody gave me that for 2 years. Why should I pay death duties? It makes me so angry that you've just hit a real nerve with me there.
Then go and live on a rock. Because if you're part of society...
But I'm giving! I'm 76. I've given for 76 years. Yeah. I've paid tax all my life.
You'll have a heart attack if you carry on.
Well, then I'll pay death duties and save the country.
I don't want you to do it here in the studio.
Inheritance tax does seem... I mean, I know that something has to be paid, but to try and up it and all the rest... I mean, it just... It's like paying tax... You do pay tax on it. You pay tax on tax on tax on tax.
Wealth creates more wealth than not. So if you've got money, it makes money. If you haven't got any money, you're screwed. Pete, your generation, and I'm not saying it's your fault, and I think it's a wonderful thing, you grew up with a free NHS. You grew up with an educational system that mostly worked. You grew up with secure employment. You grew up with a lot of people in your generation with a pension that you could rely on. You've benefited from triple lock, so that things like state pensions have been protected, whereas benefits for people who are in working age get nothing.
Yeah, but everything you just said, I've paid into. I've paid into the NHS, I've paid into my... I've had...
a 22-year-old who's working hard and paying their taxes, but they're getting much less out of the system. And
you mean the ones that are out drinking all the time and partying because they don't put money away in a pension? They don't put money away in a pension. They don't put money away in a pension.
On that note...
I did without.
Calm down, everybody,
We've got to leave it there for now. We may come back to you, though. We may do. Because we need to talk politics. We've got the Shadow Secretary for Education standing by, talking about childcare costs of primary school children, which are rising higher than wages, faster than wages.
Certainly. The Labour Party is concerned, apparently, that this is another example of the Tories failing to support families who are already facing a tidal wave of cost of living pressures, as we've been talking about.
Yes, indeed. So let's talk to Bridget Phillipson, Shadow Secretary of State for Education. Morning to you. It's good to see you this morning. Look, you'll have heard how heated it got here, talking about all the pressures that people are facing, whether it's those who are just struggling every day or those people who feel like they're being almost taxed out of existence. This is a very, very difficult time fiscally, isn't it? No matter what end of the scale you're on.
This is a difficult time for so many people, for families and for pensioners. That's why Labour set out a plan to put money back into people's pockets, so families would get up to £600 towards their energy bills through a windfall tax on oil and gas providers. You know, they've made lots of profits, and we think it's right that people are supported through this difficult time. But on childcare as well, you know, we've seen costs going up. Families are finding it incredibly hard to manage, and that means many people, usually women sadly, end up being forced to give up work because they can't make childcare work for their families. That's why we've got a children's recovery plan that would put in investment in the early years, but also childcare doesn't stop when your children go to school. So we want to see breakfast clubs, after-school activities and small group tutoring for all of our children, because we know just how difficult the pandemic has been, in addition to all of those cost of living pressures too.
And this is something that comes up time and again on the doorstep. And of course, we've got the local elections coming up as well. The cost of living crisis, certainly the cost of childcare. But inevitably, and I think we may well have lost the signal there.
Oh, she's back.
I don't know if you heard me there. Inevitably, the other thing that's going to come up on the doorstep is Partygate, and now they're calling it Beergate. Do you think it's fair that whatever happened in that Beergate incident with Keir Starmer and possibly Angela Rayner as well, do you think it's fair that that should now be investigated, as investigations went into the number 10 parties?
I think there is no comparison between the two. The police have looked into the matter. There's no case to answer. No rules were broken. I can see why Tory MPs ahead of the local elections want to spend their time seeking to drag us all into the gutter and make out that we're all the same. But really, you look at the number of fines that have been issued at Downing Street, the fact that the Prime Minister lied to the British people, that he's lied to Parliament, that we've got the only Prime Minister in modern times to have broken the law to still be in office, and understand just why they're getting so desperate around this. Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner did nothing wrong and broke no rules, and Tory MP should know better than to waste police time on this.
Interesting. The Labour Party lied, didn't it? Because it categorically denied that Angela Rayner was there. And now, of course, we've got video footage proving that she was. So why, if no rules were broken, if nothing was wrong, why were those lies propagated in the first place?
No rules were broken and there was no problem with her being there. As I understand it, there was an honest mistake made. But if Angela had been asked directly if she'd been there, she would have confirmed it. There was no attempt to, on her part to hide that. It's just, as I understand it, an honest mistake. But the fundamental point is no rules were broken, unlike in Downing Street, where they were wheeling in suitcases full of booze to have parties. I mean, there is really no comparison between the two. And this is just desperate stuff from the Tories.
Certainly people are getting very, very fed up with Partygate, Beergate and everything else, but just feel that it would be fair if the Labour parties and this particular incident were investigated in exactly the same way as Number 10's incidents. That's just a fair playing field, isn't it?
But it has been looked into and the police concluded there was no case to answer. Of course, you're right, we're all equal under the law. And it's right that we are all treated equally and that issues are investigated, but that's happened. I mean, they might not like the outcome, but it's happened.
Can we ask what you think about Parliament at the moment? Because there have been these various... there's now investigations into that porn incident, which obviously you'll be very well aware of, but there's investigations into sexism, in misogyny, inappropriate behaviour across all political parties now. What is it like as a woman in Parliament? Are you aware of a significant problem?
I think what we've seen in recent days in particular has been shocking, and it demonstrates why we do need to see further change within Parliament. I think it is slightly different sometimes when you're a woman MP, because I think some of what we've seen is where there's a power dynamic, particularly where it comes to staff, and there are many thousands of staff who work within Parliament. And I want to make sure that Parliament is a good workplace for everyone who's there. I'm glad we've got processes in place that allow people to come forward and report concerns. And I would always encourage anyone who witnesses any kind of behaviour that they regard as unacceptable in their workplace to make sure they come forward so that matters can be dealt with. And Parliament is a workplace, but of course it's a workplace like no other, and we do have to hold ourselves to a high standard.
Exactly this time yesterday, I think we were talking to Anne-Marie Trevelyan, who was saying that she's come across some pretty nasty misogyny, pinned up against a wall herself and put in a really horrible position. Have you come across any incidents like that? Have you suffered in the same way from acts of pure misogyny?
I was really sorry to hear about Anne-Marie's experiences. Personally, I haven't experienced that kind of thing. I think all women right across society will have experienced sexism in their lives because, of course, Parliament reflects wider society. So, of course, it's important that we talk about what happens in Parliament. But still too many women right across our country lose their jobs when they're pregnant, earn less than men, and are subjected to male violence. So this is part of a much bigger challenge in terms of how we make both society safer for women and how we tackle male violence at the same time.
Well, it's lovely to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Bridget Phillipson, MP, Shadow Secretary for Education. Thank you.
Can't wait to get the next batch of GB views in.
Yes,
see what you made about Pete and Mary Ann.
Misogyny has always been around, I guess, in all sort of walks of life. But when I was pregnant once, when I was pregnant, I was accused by another woman in television of flaunting my pregnancy.
Really?
Just by doing my job, but getting gradually larger and larger. Flaunting my pregnancy.
Of course, now flaunting's the big thing to do. Quite literally flaunting it, isn't it? With some of the...
I didn't do that.
Some of the...
showbiz stars with their enormous bellies all out on show.
Stephanie Tetch's here.
Hello, Stephanie.
I was thinking of Rihanna. I mean, she's properly flaunting it, but in like a positive, lovely way.
She is about to drop, and that belly has been out every single day.
Everywhere, hasn't
it's
it?
like crop tops, belly tops, shorts. I'm like, do you, Riri, make it happen and make other pregnant women feel more confident,
I'm all for
She's
it.
setting the trend, so I think celebrities these days are always going to be getting their bump out.
Yes,
now.
clearly it's the thing to do, isn't it?
Quite right.
In my day, you hit it with a tent.
Yes.
You wore a tent.
If you've got it, flaunt it.
Now, can we talk Wagatha?
Oh, this has taken a dramatic turn yesterday, guys. So in a pre-hearing yesterday at the Royal Courts of Justice, it was revealed that now Rebecca Vardy is saying that she thinks it was her agent, Caroline Watt, who has been leaking the stories. So she's
pointing the finger at her own agent?
She's pointing the finger at her agent. So this completely froze the case. It's still going to go ahead, but it's not looking good for Rebecca, and it hasn't been looking good for Rebecca for a while now. She says that she doesn't condone what's happened, but she is placing the blame
Remind
on
me,
Miss
who's suing who? I've got completely...
This is what
confused.
doesn't make sense. So Rebecca Vardy is actually the one that's taken Colleen Rooney to court for libel because Colleen Rooney was the one that said that Rebecca Vardy was the one that was selling stories. So obviously now Rebecca's saying, well, no, that's libel because it wasn't me. But as the case has gone on, it's become more evident that Rebecca, number one, has been selling stories in the past about other people, but also there's been some kind of communication between her and her agent about Colleen. So the more the case has gone on, it hasn't actually looked in Rebecca Vardy's favour. And now with this outcome that's come out, I don't think she's going to win this case. And it doesn't make her look in a good light either.
No, she's made everything seem worse.
Why does Rebecca Vardy have an agent?
I don't know. Well,
she's an agent for?
Yeah.
She's a star.
Yeah, she's a wag.
She's a wag star.
They need agents, and she's done TV bits before, and she's got quite a big beauty empire as well. She is a businesswoman in her own right. But I'm sure her pointing the finger at her agent is definitely going to damage their relationship.
Well, yes. Well, it will do. Well, look, it's interesting that court case continues, of course, so we shall have to wait and see what Oh, it hasn't started yet. Oh, so she's doing all this before it started.
I thought it was ongoing.
No. This is the pre-hearing. So it's like she's trying to save her own back because it's not looking good. All the stuff that's been coming out, even before the case starts, it's like I feel like the nail's already in the coffin for her.
Oh, God, terrible. All this hoo-ha. They haven't even started the case yet. Oh, well.
They just get on.
Of all the things in the world, and they've got all this money.
They've got so much money. They don't need to waste it.
Rebecca didn't need to bring it to court because now it seems like she's going to be the loser out of this.
Do you know, they should both just shake hands and both donate £500,000 to charity.
Yeah, and all their designer bags and shoes too.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Meanwhile, Celine Dion isn't very well.
Okay, no, she isn't. Poor Celine. She's been trying to get back to the UK since the pandemic. So she had her Courageous tour, which was due to come before the pandemic. She had to cancel it. But now, yesterday, she released a video saying that she's going to have to pull her dates in places like London, Manchester, Dublin, because she's been suffering from muscle spasms. I don't think she's given us the full what's been going on with her, but she says she's been working with her doctors for a very long time to try get back on her feet, and she says she wants to do a show when she's feeling her best.
Because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of work.
If your health is suffering and you are as rich as she is, somebody somewhere should say to her, you don't have to do this. Just look after yourself.
It's true, but I think, when you're born to perform, and it's like us when we're born to do something, you want to do it because, you know, you can have the money, but then it's like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? I think as a musician, you probably feel like that tour is that thing that will spur you on and connect you with your fans. And, you know, most musicians haven't had that in a while since the pandemic.
I think it's interesting with someone like Celine Dion because she's sort of not in favour, not with the youth these days, is it? It's all from sort of like 20 years ago. But when you actually sort of play one of her tracks or whatever, her voice is unbelievable.
Incredible. Like, you cannot, like, you know, doubt her. You cannot criticise her. She's just got an incredible voice. But more than anything, what I liked about that video, it just shows how professional she is. You know, these days, when these artists want to pull out, they just be like, oh, tour's cancelled, like a bit like an Adele, and there's not really a good reason for it. But in the video she released yesterday, she looked like she was about to cry. You could tell that it really meant a lot to her, and she didn't want to cancel. So there's that professionalism, which I love.
Well, her heart will go on.
Always.
Oh!
And on. I had to get it in there somewhere. Stephanie, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Thank you. Do stay with us. We've got plenty more to come at the top of the next hour.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Tory MP Neil Parish is facing calls to resign after being accused of watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, April the 30th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio and online. You can watch us anywhere you want. This is the People's Channel, and it's your chance to let us know your views, and maybe we'll speak to you as well.
That would be nice. Coming up for you this morning, porn in Parliament. The MP Neil Parish under investigation for allegedly watching porn on his phone as he rejects calls to stand down, claiming it was an accident. What do you think?
Meanwhile, the government is introducing new plans to protect victims of domestic abuse. We'll be speaking to the Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding, Rachel Maclean, later in the show about this proposal, as well as getting her take on all of those scandals coming out of Westminster.
A fall from grace. The three-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker slammed for apparently not showing any remorse after being jailed for 2.5 years over a bankruptcy scam. We'll talk to the Reverend Jonathan Aitken, of course used to be an MP, then went to prison. We'll get his thoughts on what it's going to be like for Boris Becker as he starts life behind bars.
And also, Pope Francis has called on couples to be kinder to their mothers-in-law. And TV personality Kim Woodburn will be joining us later as well with her cleaning tips, because we've been talking about whether or not you iron your bed sheets, and it's turned out to be a very controversial topic.
Yeah, so anything you want to talk about, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or email us or tweet us, GB News. We're your channel, so do get in touch.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talking about being the people's channel. Now, this to me is why I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Mike in Blackpool, morning to you, Mike. He says, what a splendid way to start your morning, indeed your whole day, by listening to our friends, Stephen and Anne. Because that's what we want to be, is your friends in your living room or in your car, wherever you're listening to us or watching us. But, you know, we all want to be part of a big, lovely family.
And that's why the bosses at the top have actually said that's why we ought to be the people's channel. And that's what we feel we already are, because we're communicating with you and reading out your views. Mike says, good to see you guys on TV in Queensland, Australia.
Oh, yeah. And Mark in Worcester says, I've been feeling quite low this morning. Sorry to hear that, Mark. But Stephen and Anne have just brought a smile to my face with their humour.
Oh, that's lovely.
So, you know, but this is what it's all about. There's plenty of doom and gloom in the world. We're going to talk about it in a minute. But
it's our job to talk about that, I suppose,
is.
isn't it? The things that sort of really matter. But maybe the things that matter even more are what you're talking about, whether you iron your bed sheets and whether you're nice to your mother-in-law.
Yeah. And just keeping you company.
Yeah.
Why not? There's nothing wrong with that. And it's why we like it when you keep us company as well by getting in touch. So thank you very, very much for those comments. We'll go through the mother-in-law jokes a little bit later on.
Yes, we've got quite a few, some of
good.
which can be read out, I think. Now, the Tory MP under investigation for allegedly watching pornography on his phone in the Commons chamber says he opened it accidentally.
Neil Parish has rejected calls to stand down as an MP after he had the Tory whip suspended yesterday. He's a select committee chair and he said he would be continuing his duties as an MP whilst cooperating with the investigation.
Now, this is extraordinary because he himself was on GB News 3 days ago, while everybody knew it was happening, knew that there was an MP allegedly doing this, but we didn't know his name. He came on GB News during that period, and this is what he told us about the incident.
I mean, I think the Whip's office will do a thorough investigation and we will wait and see that result. And I think, you know, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken.
And that's what we found extraordinary when we realised when he was named and we thought, hang on a minute, he was on GB News.
Talking about it.
Talking about it, but not volunteering the fact that it was about him.
Which would have been, well, refreshing and honest, wouldn't
it? It would have been the right thing to do, surely.
So. Let's talk to Emily Carver, who's a columnist at Conservative Home. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
Just about that clip from Wednesday. I mean, I know it would have taken a lot of bottle to say, well, hold on a minute, actually, this is me. That would have taken some bottle, but that would have been the right thing to do, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm just surprised he bothered doing the interview. I mean, it's great that he did, because now we can see what he is, or at least we can make judgments about him that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. But I can't imagine having the nerve to do that. He must have known that he was the one that these two female MPs were talking about. How could he not? But presumably, you're not going to out yourself on live national television, but you would have thought he wouldn't have accepted the interview to begin with, knowing that he'd be asked about this.
We can only think that he must have been booked to do the interview and he must have felt to withdraw at a time when everybody was speculating about who it was, might have made him look... But either way...
It's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary.
It's extraordinary to have that footage just there available to us.
What do you make of the allegations? Now, whether... he's claiming, apparently, that it was just something he pressed accidentally, a link or a picture or something that someone had sent him, which is a possibility. But nevertheless, having your phone on in the chamber, I know a lot of MPs do it, but is it still an excuse? I mean, he's still, either which way, he's still in a lot of hot water, isn't he?
It's interesting that he hasn't bothered denying it outright, saying that it was a mistake. It's possible It's possible it was a mistake. We all have things that pop up on our phones, but I don't think many of us just have a porno pop up on our phone in the middle of our workday. It's quite extraordinary how he's said it was an accident. I do feel for his poor wife.
Who's standing by him.
Who's standing by him. Presumably, I think she said she's very cross, like the rest of us probably are with this kind of behaviour. But you know what? There's always these investigations and inquiries and so on and so forth. I imagine that in most workplaces, that would just be a done deal. You're out the door, surely. I can't imagine that would be acceptable.
So do you think that is what should happen here? I mean, for the sake of the party, if nothing else?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, I do believe these things probably do deserve some investigation because, you know, it could have been an honest mistake. However, I doubt it, considering 2 female MPs turned him in and his name has now come out.
It takes a while as well. I mean, if you did click on something that unfortunately came up with a pornographic image or something, you would immediately get rid of it. And it takes a while for 2 different female MPs to notice that that's what he's doing.
And he hasn't said that they have a vendetta against him or something like that. So I think he's been caught red-handed and now he's trying to think of how he can possibly get around this. But I mean, for the Conservatives, I guess with all of this stuff and with the Partygate stuff, I imagine their best way of dealing with it is, or the best outcome is that the public just view all MPs as the same. They're all at it. They're all as bad as each other. But it does seem to be the Tory MPs who are getting in the most hot water, particularly over, you know, claims of sexual harassment and these kind of...
Do you think it is toxic in the House of Commons?
Well, I've actually worked there for 2 years. I myself didn't find it toxic. But I can see how it can be. It's a very strange working environment, isn't it? You've got all these little tiny offices within this big parliament. MPs aren't employees. There's no real system of HR. Those who work in the offices are often young and just starting out in their career, and they're unlikely to make claims against their bosses for fear of, you know, the reputational damage that will do, and the late nights and the boozing culture as well. But I don't want us to, you know, tarnish the whole lot of them. I think that's lazy. You wouldn't do that in other industries necessarily, but it's clear there are a lot of bad apples. I mean, 56 or 57 MPs are currently under some sort of investigation for some sexual harassment. That is extraordinary. What is that, 1 in 10, 1 in 9?
So don't you have to look to the top of all parties maybe, or whatever, to say this has been allowed, it's been enabled for many years maybe, and we've still got a culture here where terrible things can happen?
Well, the thing is, I don't think there's any possible way of ensuring that nothing terrible ever happens. Whatever workplace you're in, there may always be someone who's, for want of a better word, a bit of a pervert, a bit of a sleaze, not conducting themselves in the right way. I don't think there's any way, unless you completely sterilised the whole of Parliament, that this would never happen. So I don't think we should aim for that necessarily. But clearly there needs to be a better way of handling these issues. I get tired of these endless inquiries and investigations. They seem to go on forever.
Well, they're very useful as a way of covering up and pushing...
Well, exactly. Keep it, you know, we're handling it with an inquiry. I don't exactly know what that means in reality. I don't think many of us do. It seems, you know, taxpayers' money just being used again.
Talking about inquiries and investigations, what are you making of the Beergate situation? We were just talking to the Shadow Secretary of State for Education, who said, well, this is an entirely different situation. Nothing illegal happened. It's been looked at by the police in that region, and there's no case to answer here. Drop it.
It's all a bit fishy, really. I'm not sure what I think in terms of whether it's the same as what Boris Johnson has been accused of. Neither, in my personal view, were particularly egregious breaches of the law. The Cake Gate was in the summer months when lockdown measures were easing for everyone else. That needs to be remembered. Tom Harwood's done some good work on this, I've seen on the channel. And this Durham thing, I think, again, the issue is that they've clearly lied a little bit. And held back the truth, particularly with whether Angela Rayner was present, whether she's present but not involved. It kind of smacks of that, doesn't it? So I don't know whether they are the same. I guess you can argue that the person who makes the rules must stand by them, but we are all equal under the law. and Keir Starmer has done a lot of moralising. So
is that the issue that he's? I mean, understandably, he's a politician. He's played politics with it. Get that. But do you think this will come back to bite him as a result?
I think people don't like, and I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but a lot of people don't like the moralising, the holier-than-thou attitude, the attacking on this when people are actually concerned about the cost of living or, I don't know, illegal crossings over the channel or the fact that they can't see a GP. It does seem a little bit like navel-gazing, a little bit Westminster bubble. I think a lot of us do want to move on. And I think a lot of people actually just don't expect much better.
Yeah, OK.
That's
interesting.
Which is depressing.
Yeah. It's very depressing. I was just thinking what the former leader, Jeremy Corbyn, would have made of it. And I think, funnily enough, because he was very principled, I don't think he would have gone on and on and on and on and on about Partygate, would he? He would have tried to bring Prime Minister's questions, for instance, back to the real issues. And that's something Keir Starmer won't do.
Also, I think he, like Theresa May, actually, were quite quick to be against some of the tighter restrictions of lockdown. I believe, if I remember what Jeremy Corbyn was saying at the time, I think he was had a different position from the Labour front bench currently. So, who knows?
I wonder how things would go if there were a general election now.
Oh, I dread to think.
I mean, the Lib Dems will clean up.
Well, you never know.
They will clean up.
You never know.
Yeah.
Emily Carver, really good to see you.
Thank
you
you
very much indeed. It'd be fascinating. It would be fascinating to have a general election.
Because the local elections are different. That sort of traditionally is when you kick the incumbent government,
midterms,
isn't it?
Yeah.
But a general election would be different.
Because that's really who do you trust to get on with it. I don't know.
Would you welcome a general election now?
I still think it'd be quite nice in a way. Oh, it's a lot.
Would it clear the air?
I tell you, the problem is they're expensive.
Yes.
They're very expensive to hold, and, we haven't got any money, so probably not the best way to spend money.
But wouldn't it clear the air? People who say, we've got to get rid of this lot, let's see if we would at the moment. Well, we haven't got an appetite for that, maybe.
Interesting. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. It is 8:13. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines.
Well, the Conservative MP we've been talking about, who allegedly watched porn on his phone, suggests he may have opened the video accidentally. Neil Parish is rejecting calls to stand down, despite having the Tory whip now suspended. He says he's going to wait for the outcome of a parliamentary standards inquiry.
The cross-party committee has warned that reforms are needed to stop hostile states buying access to MPs through all-party parliamentary groups. It comes after MI5 revealed that a female spy had been instrumental in setting up the Chinese in Britain group.
Boris Becker has been jailed for 2.5 years after hiding millions of pounds worth of assets and loans to avoid paying his debts. The three-time Wimbledon champion was found guilty of hiding assets worth £2.5 million after he was declared bankrupt in 2017.
A bid to overturn Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking conviction has failed, despite lawyers arguing that one of the jurors failed to disclose he was a victim of sexual abuse. The judge concluded the juror was fair and impartial in the original case.
And fraudsters are conning travellers out of an average of nearly £3,000, according to Lloyds Bank. It says holiday booking scams have gone up by over a third in the past year.
Tiny village with a population of just 400 in Northumberland has won Britain's best beach for the second year in a row. Bamber boasts a historic castle, cricket pitch and miles of clean sand, which won at the top UK seaside spot in a survey by consumer group Which. And if you're listening on the radio this morning, I'd have a little Google of Bamber. Because it looks
Is it Bamberg or Bamber?
I would imagine Bamber, but I don't actually know.
It looks absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Everybody's going to flood there now, which will spoil it probably completely. But it does
Fair point.
The perfect quintessential British beach. It looks fab. Just need the weather to go with it, I guess.
Now, as Russia escalates its invasion of Ukraine, it seems to be regrouping in the east at the moment. The Foreign Office has announced that the UK will send war crimes experts to investigate atrocities apparently committed by Russian forces.
This all comes as 2 British charity workers have now been reportedly captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. It's understood the volunteers have been named as Paul Urey and Dylan Healy. They were detained earlier this week, apparently, at a checkpoint in the south of the country.
Well, meanwhile, NATO's Deputy Secretary-General has warned that it could be years before the war is over. All that coming as Britain, as we were reporting yesterday, is sending 8,000 troops to eastern Ukraine to sort of work with NATO forces in some of those countries on the eastern front, but also countries that aren't currently part of NATO.
So let's speak now to former UK ambassador to the UN and national security advisor to the Prime Minister from 2015 to 2017, Sir Mark Lyle-Grant. And a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
That sounds like a terrible job, a war crimes investigator, but I suppose there are professionals at this sort of thing.
There are professionals, and there's a number of different investigations now going on. The Ukrainian authorities are doing their own investigation. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, whose prosecutor is in fact British, Karim Khan, he's also launched an investigation. And now Britain's government is going to send some experts to try and help collect the testimony, the videos, the photographs, to try and log, really, all the evidence of the horrendous war crimes that have taken place.
But look, I know it's important, because I know these things cannot be forgotten about and swept under the carpet. But in terms of, we talk about the ICC, the International Criminal Court, there is no way on God's earth that Putin is going to allow himself to be hauled before the ICC.
No, that is absolutely true. And I think we have to be realistic, and it's very unlikely that any individuals who are Russian will leave Russia, which would allow them to be convicted before the International Criminal Court. But I think issuing warrants against individuals, identifying the commanders of units that have committed these horrendous events, killing civilians, torture, raping women, I think it's really important as a deterrent against perhaps future such behaviour, but also as a symbol that the international community rejects such barbarity.
Can I ask about, because there's been questions raised, and it might not be the right time, maybe far from the right time, to sort of look at UN peacekeeping troops and what have you at the moment. But, of course, that would never happen while Russia has a veto.
Correct.
That needs to be looked at. Does the whole system of how the UN operates need to be looked at now?
The UN can be a very frustrating place to work. I was there for 5.5 years, sitting in the UN Security Council. And the reality is that when one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, and of course Russia is one of those 5, as is Britain, if they are directly involved in a conflict, they can prevent any action being taken by the UN Security Council because they have the veto. Now, of course, the majority of the international community, including the British government, says we should reform this process, but it cannot be reformed under the UN Charter except with the agreement of all 5 permanent members.
That is stupid and ridiculous, isn't it?
It is ridiculous, but one has to go back to the origin of the United Nations for why that was done. It was a necessary compromise that all the top nations of the world would join the UN, which wasn't a given. Because if you remember, between the wars, the League of Nations was set up to try and stop future wars. But because none of the big powers at the time joined, the Second World War took place and no one could prevent it. So a compromise was made after the Second World War that in order for the big powers, the winners of the Second World War, to join this new body, they would be given the veto power. If that veto power was taken away, Russia would undoubtedly leave the United Nations, but so would the United States, probably. And then the whole thing would fall down.
Why?
Because the United States is very attached to the veto as well. They have vetoed many resolutions on Israel, for instance, in the Middle East. So Russia is not the only country that feels that it needs to have that veto to protect its national interests. So it's a price that you pay to have at least one universal forum, and it is the UN, the only universal forum. Every one of the 193 countries in the world meet together. That is the price you pay. And we shouldn't forget that although it is very frustrating when there is a conflict of this severity in Europe, that the UN cannot put an end to it, The UN is still doing some fantastically good work coordinating humanitarian response. They'll be needed when it comes to redevelopment of Ukraine after the conflict is over, etc. So the UN does a huge amount of good work, but in this particular instance, unfortunately, as we've seen from...
Where one member is threatening to use nuclear weapons.
Yep, it can't prevent that if that is a permanent member of the Security Council.
Yeah, it does. No wonder people get very frustrated with it all. Do we... in all of this, do you think we do seem to be without, in terms of military action or a military police, if you like, policing the world? I know that goes down very badly with some parts of the world. But we're left with nothing then, aren't we? If the UN can't act, and NATO obviously only involves certain countries, and Article 5 and all the rest of it being triggered is a difficult process. There is no overarching sort of world police then, is there? A world political police in all of this?
No, there isn't. There is the G20, which represents broadly the richest sort of 20 countries in the world, which includes Russia and China at this stage. But they don't get involved directly in political events. That is left for the United Nations. But I wouldn't want you to go, your viewers to go away with the idea that the UN is useless because it cannot prevent this particular conflict. It does a fantastic amount of really important work on a day-to-day basis, addressing poverty, climate change, humanitarian disasters, etc. It is just this one flaw that is at the heart of the UN system, but as I say, was a necessary compromise in order for the UN to be set up in the first place.
I mean, you were National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister for 2 years. Who would that have been?
It was David Cameron and then Theresa May.
Right. What would your advice be now to the Prime Minister, in that we are in a situation where there is surely got to be a possibility that Russia is... Putin has said Boris Johnson is the greatest evil and all this sort of thing. We're under threat, aren't we, in this country? We've got to look out for more... For Russian agents coming in, for potential attacks, whether large scale or polonium-210 or whatever it may be. We've got to be on pretty high alert, haven't we?
Well, the British government has deliberately set itself at the forefront of the fight, if you like, against President Putin's military aggression on Ukraine. Along with the Americans and some of the Eastern Europeans, we have been the foremost arguing for robust sanctions against Russia and for providing effective military equipment to Ukraine to help Ukraine defend itself. So yes, that does put Britain, if you like, in the crosshairs for Russia. And I think the British government is fully aware of the risk that Russia will try to punish the United Kingdom in some way, maybe through a cyber attack, maybe through sanctions of its own, which we've already seen. But I think the government is aware of that, and I know that defensive measures are being taken, and we're prepared for that sort of activity.
OK.
So the war rumbles on.
Yeah.
Sadly, it will.
So, Samar, it's fascinating to talk to someone with your experience and expertise, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching The People's Channel, and that's because we like to be in touch with you and you with us. So do stay with us, because we've got plenty more to come, including a GBNews viewer and his take on the day's top stories.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.26 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne live across the UK on your TV and on your radio.
Now, as we've been saying all morning, we're sort of the people's channel. And that's because we like to be in touch directly with you and you with us. We've got lots and lots of your views to read out. But we thought, rather than just reading it out, how about actually chatting to somebody? One of our GB News viewers, Paul Fleury, is on the line to tell us what he thinks about, just about everything we've been talking about this morning. Hello, Paul.
Hello, morning.
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 How long have you been a GB News viewer?
Since the very first flicker of GB News came on the telly, actually.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right from
and
the
you're still
beginning.
with us.
So I do like watching it.
Good. Well, that's very good to hear. Look, there's a lot of stuff going on today. What do you fancy talking about first? I mean, the Ukraine, perhaps, and the British boys and girls who are going to be sent out, I mean, not to Ukraine, but to parts of Eastern Europe. What do you make of that? Is it a sensible decision, do you think?
Yes, I think it definitely is. It's better to have, in this situation, our troops in a place where I think they have influence rather than perhaps sitting on Salisbury Plain doing exercises. I think if NATO shows strength on its eastern borders, that will definitely be a deterrent to Putin. It's vital.
And of course, one of the other main topics, I suppose, of the day, although it trundles on week after week, is sleaze in government. What do you think about this? How can we clean up government?
Well, I don't think you can change humanity, so there isn't a golden bullet to have, people that are devoid of any misdemeanours there. And I think sometimes we just need to put things in perspective as well, in proportion. We've lost a sense of proportion, I think, in these things, and we sort of expect our leaders to be like the Almighty.
I do wonder with that. You do get this idea. I mean, I'm not saying that politicians shouldn't be whiter than white, but we expect them to be whiter than white when we are not. I guess we're a bit hypocritical, aren't we?
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, we're looking at Boris Johnson and his fines, for example. I mean, if he was caught doing 32 miles an hour in a 30 zone and fined and given 3 points, should he cease being Prime Minister? I mean, at what point do you say that the punishment, moving him away, is fitting of what he's done? Looking at those Partygate pictures, I can see why he thinks he wasn't necessarily breaking the law, but other people have an agenda to get rid of him come what may. So sometimes when you hear politicians just frenziedly demanding that a minister or the Prime Minister resigns, it rings a bit hollow to me.
If you were talking to politicians of all hues at the moment, well, as you are probably, you're on telly, what are the most important issues to you? Is it Partygate? Is it, general sleaze in the House of Commons? Or is it something entirely different that affects you and your life?
Well, the most important thing that worries me, and it has really more than anything in my life, actually, is Ukraine. A major European war with nuclear power, and someone who's actually behaving in a quite similar way to what Adolf Hitler did in the 1940s. And imagine if Adolf Hitler had nuclear weapons. That's the way I'm looking at this, and slightly concerned. And that's why, coming back to what you said at the beginning, is it best that we put 8,000 troops and the other NATO countries put strength on the eastern borders with Russia? I think yes, it is, because in 1941, if the Soviet Union had the military strength that NATO does now, Adolf Hitler wouldn't have invaded, would he? So as long as you've got strength on the other side, these guys, these despots, only launch an offensive and take things on when they think they're going to win.
It's interesting. I mean, talking about Hitler, because I mean we've all heard these comparisons, but it's difficult to say. I find it quite difficult to sort of say, well, Putin's behaving like Hitler behaved, because it's such a comparison, isn't it? But do you think that's how we need to be looking at this?
Well, I think we need to be look at some of the parallels, really. This guy signed an agreement with Ukraine in, 2007, and then pretty much has said recently he doesn't think the country should exist. Well, that's a bit bonkers, isn't it? And he comes from the KGB background, where he had a mentality to think of the West in a certain way. And he's followed that through. He's another guy who wants to redraw lines on a map, and he doesn't really care about the people that get killed in the middle.
He does it using the term denazification. We've run out of time to talk to you, and it's been really lovely to be able to talk back to a GB News viewer. What are you off to do this lovely Saturday?
I'm just about to go and see my grandsons play football for Rochester FC, actually. I'm always their number one fan, sitting on the halfway line, cheering them on. So they're 9 years old and they're twins, so I should be doing that.
I know nothing about football, but is that a Rochester shirt behind you then?
No, I'm, for my sins, a Crystal Palace fan.
Oh,
it was Crystal Palace's kit in 1961, the year I was born. And that's signed by Sean Derry, who's a good old Palace captain and currently, I think, the assistant manager of the club.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, well, look,
yeah.
Paul,
it's lovely to see inside your home.
It
You
is.
see us in our studio. We've seen you inside your home.
My wife will kill me because I'm showing you a few things that I shouldn't do.
Well, look, Paul, it's been a joy to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And you get if you want to talk to us on the show, get in touch. We'd love to sort out more chats with you. In the meantime, there's lots politically going on. Let's talk to Rachel Maclean, who's the Under Secretary of State for Safeguarding, and joins us now. Minister, good to see you this morning. Thanks for hanging on.
Good morning.
Look, in terms of safeguard, there's lots to talk about, as you know. But in terms of your brief and safeguarding, there is real concern, isn't there, particularly in what happened with the pandemic, about domestic abuse in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why during the pandemic, we put extra support into some of the helplines, into some of the refuges and shelters and those services to help women who unfortunately were victims of this awful crime that, as you say, is perpetuated behind closed doors. Often people are trapped in their homes and they can't get away, particularly in the pandemic. But I think what we are doing today, if I can just sort of explain it really briefly, is we are widening the definition of the controlling and coercive behaviour and changing the law so that more victims can get protection. Because as you probably know, domestic abuse isn't just about that physical violence. It's also about some of these really insidious and horrible and frightening forms of abuse that are perpetuated, that type of manipulation, preventing a woman from going out, preventing her from having access to her finances, manipulating how children are used. And it often actually escalates after someone's left the relationship. So even if she's managed to escape the perpetrator, she's living somewhere else, it can sometimes continue, sometimes for years. And you hear these awful stories of people who just can't move on with their life. And we want to provide that protection for these victims. And that's what this new offence will do.
All right. I mean, I know it must be very, very difficult to explain briefly, but we're talking about better protection for those victims. How are you going to make that happen? What's going to be the difference?
So we're changing the law to change the definition of a perpetrator of controlling and coercive behaviour. So before now, we haven't been able to prosecute someone once they've left the relationship and they're not living together anymore. Now we will be able to prosecute people even if they're not living with their partner or they're not in the relationship anymore. So exes can be prosecuted. And similarly, if you've got a family member, because actually domestic abuse can also be perpetrated in a sort of family situation, those types of perpetrators can also now be charged and prosecuted under the law. So it just widens the net of who is caught, and it catches more of these types of experiences that women are suffering.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's all well and good for those people who are able to start the process, if you like, but how do we go about continuing to help those women, and men in some cases, who can't get out? They don't know where to turn or are too embarrassed to turn anywhere and are just living with this.
So you're right to say that men are affected. 75% of the victims roughly are women, but men, of course, can be affected, and they do face probably additional barriers in some circumstances because of the sort of views about what men should and should not do. And clearly women also face barriers. And that's why we have put a lot more support and money into resources such as the helpline, the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, so that my first port of call, my advice would be to call the helpline. We've also got advice and help in pharmacies. We've got this brilliant scheme called Ask for Annie. So if you find your local pharmacy, you might see, hopefully you'll see, because it's been rolled out to a large number of pharmacies, a poster called Ask for Annie. If you just go into your pharmacy, you ask for Annie, the pharmacist will be trained to take you to a safe place and give you that help and that signposting to any services that you might need. And it is also about making sure that we're training the police to be able to respond properly in whatever situation they come across.
I know it's an entirely different subject, except that it's not. Just to take you away from the specifics of your brief, misogyny, and to a certain extent we are talking about most of the victims of domestic abuse are women, not all. Yeah. But misogyny seems to be alive and well in our society and in Parliament. Have you come across it yourself in your parliamentary career?
Yeah, so I'm sure you're referring obviously to our colleague Neil Parish and that situation. But what I would say, and I can only speak from my own experience and I can only give my own personal perspective. I came into politics when I was 50, having had a career in two different industries. I started off in the City of London. I worked in finance and banking. And then I worked in IT for many years and in business. And I've experienced sexism and misogyny in all of those roles. And I do experience it to some degree in Parliament, as any woman will tell you. But in my case, what I've experienced, I think, is overwhelmingly the men that I work with in Parliament, male MPs, they recognise that we need a better culture. They recognise that women need support, probably additional support sometimes, to build their parliamentary careers because of some of the barriers that still exist. And I've experienced nothing but sort of a helping hand. Men have gone out of their way to help me, to mentor me, to support me, to guide me, etc. And so maybe I've just been fortunate, I don't know, but I haven't experienced any of the really egregious examples that I know that some people have, and it does go on. I want to be clear, I know it goes on and it's unacceptable. But I think sometimes it's a bit more insidious. So sometimes it's more about just being overlooked or underestimated. You know, you can be in a room and you can make a point and you'll make the point and all the men will just sort of not notice it. And then a man will make exactly the same point 3 minutes later and everyone will go, oh, that's brilliant. How perceptive.
Yeah, how do we go about tackling that? Because as I said, that's not a parliamentary estate problem, is it? No. Particularly, I mean that's everywhere. How do we go about changing the mindset?
I think it has to start right from the beginning. It has to start with education, with all the work that we're doing in schools to educate our young people. I mean, the Home Office is playing quite a leading role in this, actually, with some of the work that we are doing on the communications campaigns, government-funded campaigns, to just make it clear that it's unacceptable to sexually harass someone in a public place, for example. We're also putting money into education. It has to be talked about at schools. Parents have to have confidence to talk about this with their young boys, with their sons and their daughters, and educate their children as to what is acceptable, what's normal, what they can expect, and where things go wrong, what they can do about it.
Rachel McLean, we are out of time. Can I just say the best thing you could have said today is, well, I can only talk from my own experience.
Yes, exactly.
Because that is what we want. It's about hearing what you think and not just towing a party line, as many of your colleagues have to do.
And maybe even that you went into politics later in life instead of having been in politics all your life. It's been really good to speak to you. Will you come in and speak to us in our studio one day?
Of course, I'd be delighted to.
Thank you.
Fabulous. We'll hold you to that, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you.
Refreshing, that, I thought.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Really, you know. Sometimes people stand out because they say from the heart, they speak from the heart, and they speak sense.
Yeah.
It's nice when it comes from a government minister.
Yes, I really liked her a lot.
Yeah.
Stay with us, we've got plenty more to come, including another look at the papers. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.44 morning, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, live across the UK on your TV, your radio and online. And we were talking earlier on, do you remember that lovely place that's been named Village of the Year or Beach of the Year? It's Bamborough.
Bamborough.
It's spelt Bamberg, like Edinburgh.
Yeah.
But it's Bamborough. So there you go. Thank you, Floyd Mack, for correcting me on that one.
It looked like the most beautiful beach. Actually, all the village and everything near around. But don't go there because you'll spoil it.
We'll go. We can go.
We'll go secretly, yeah.
Oh. Wait, it's just up the road from where you grew up.
No, it's on the other side of the country, isn't it?
Oh,
Northumberland. I'm Cumbria.
Oh, OK. No, it's the other side.
As you can tell, we've already been joined by broadcaster Pete Price and anthropologist Marianne Hota, who are going to help us look through the papers. Marianne, you're looking at HRT in the Times.
Yeah, so this has been rumbling on, and it's found its way to page 16 of the Times. I really think it should probably be, on the front pages, because this is a culmination of those global supply chains, of the impact of Brexit, all the rest of it.
Interesting question, then. Why isn't it on the front pages?
Because people don't really care about older women
there you go.
very much. So this is about HRT, hormone replacement treatment, which is a treatment for women who are experiencing symptoms of the menopause, being rationed because the supplies just aren't there. So Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, has issued, quote, serious shortage protocols, apparently a kind of an official thing that means that basically if you are on HRT treatment, and it's a legitimate medication. It's not like a little luxury thing. It's something that really has a real impact on your health and well-being. You can only get 3 months' worth of supplies. But already we've heard lots of women are basically getting a prescription, but then the pharmacy says, we haven't got any.
Yeah.
So then you go to another pharmacy and they go, we haven't got any either. And then you kind of go, well, I've only got a few days left. And then you fall off a cliff.
Yes.
Because if you can't take it, you can't take it. So now there's sort of, groups on Facebook saying, oh, I've got a few, you could have mine, or people selling, trying to buy it on the black market. It's super dodgy. And it's an absolute scandal. It really is a scandal.
Well, there was a shortage before the pandemic, wasn't there? And the pandemic just made it far, far worse now.
And again, I know I'm getting a lot of jip on social media for being a party political. Just like to say, I'm not a member of any political party. I'm not an activist. I've just got opinions about how the country ought to be run for us, the people. I just think, again, we're just seeing the government really, really slow to respond. That the Health Secretary now, at the end of April, is going, oh, yeah, we should do something about that because it's actually impacting people's lives in a really negative way. In the same way that the cost of living crisis, oh, yeah, well, we did a spring statement and that had no benefit for anybody who's struggling with the cost of living. So maybe Boris Johnson, last week will have a meeting of the Cabinet to perhaps discuss maybe they should do some stuff.
Where do you want the money to come from for
depressing.
this? Where do you want the money to come from for this? We've just been in a pandemic again.
You can't say that to women who need HRT.
No, of course you can't, but you can't say that to people who are waiting for operations with cancer. 6.5 million now who've been waiting for treatment. That's the problem. Once again, forget the government. We are short of everything. And we've got the crisis in China now, where they're in lockdown. So we've got all those products can't come over here, which is going to be another crisis as well as the war.
It's got to be a priority. It's like, isn't it? Because it's real quality of life stuff.
Oh, yes, of course it is. But there are other people out there now saying what I'm waiting for would help my quality of life.
So the government need to act. Simple as that.
Well, that's what governments are for.
Exactly. But they're not doing anything.
But do we know where the shortage?
After their own interests.
But is the shortage just coming from is it a supply chain issue? Is that what? In which case, there's not actually anything we can do, is there?
Well, I mean, at this point, no. You have to issue your serious shortage protocol and hope for the best. But if you can look down the road and plan ahead, which you really kind of want, your leaders to do, and people who are controlling, pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, you need to plan ahead for these things.
But how can you plan ahead when there was a pandemic?
It won't just be HRT that will be...
How can you plan ahead when there's been a pandemic? Nobody in the world would know what has just happened. Everything's gone wrong. In not this country, every country, because of the pandemic.
Well, let's hope, though, we do have some emergency planning measures go into place, because it is a concern. Pete, can we change? I want to, because this was in the last hour, we didn't get to it because we were busy chatting. In the Mirror about Britain's Got Talent, Billy Elliot's stuff. What is this all about? Because I haven't seen any of this.
I think this is a nice story, and I picked this story because it's a group of boys called Five Star Boys, and they're 5 real Billy Elliot boys who sadly love dancing, but sadly have had their passion taken away from them through bullying. People have tried to stop them doing what they want.
Sort of Billy Elliot story.
It's the Billy Elliot story, and they put it on Britain's Got Talent. The reason I picked this story is I am a great fan of Matthew Bourne, and most of the male dancers there are, if you have to categorise, heterosexual. Dancing is for everybody. Footballers have used ballet classes to learn balance. And I'm so glad that Britain's Got Talent has used this group of kids, because they're great kids. I believe they're superb dancers. And it's to say, follow your dream. I lived with... Well, when I was young, it was illegal to be a homosexual. I'm not saying that they are gay. But I wanted to do stuff that you couldn't do. And I think it's incredible that you should be allowed to be who you are and do what you want. And I think to dance, I think it's a wonderful expression. I couldn't imagine life without Matthew Bourne.
Well, it is the Billy Elliot story. Have you seen Billy Elliot?
Yeah.
Dancing's for girls.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I wish I could dance. You see all these pop stars and things.
You're not dancing at the wedding?
Oh, well, this little bit of smooch, slow dance, yeah.
So you're not rehearsing one of these special dances to shock them?
A routine. No.
I am incredibly disappointed.
You did Strictly. You'd look well in a Fred Astaire
bit
suit.
Strictly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll give it. I would love to be able to dance like that. And some of the moves that you see, it's the pop stars and you're Justin Timberlakes and all that lot who can really do so. It's like amazing. Tom Holland, who was actually in Billy Elliot, wasn't he? One of the original.
He was. I saw him in Billy Elliot.
Yeah, and he's Spider-Man now, Pete. You know.
I mean, he's done tremendously well.
But he does. Yeah. There's some of his dancing on. He was on what's that show called? Lip Sync Challenge in the States, and the stuff he was dancing, it was unbelievable.
I think Tom Holland's going to play Fred Astaire in a new movie.
Wow.
Wow.
A piece of casting. I love that.
That is really
clever. You said about dancing. I can dance, but when... I can dance, but when I was in Panto, I struggled when it's in routines. Right. And Bev, who was our choreographer, I'll never forget it.
Who did you play in Banter?
Well, I was... ugly sister, but I had terrible nipple rash, so I had to stop using them,
Well, there you are.
No. And,
sorry, Stephen.
Oh, God. In fact, it was the wonderful panto. I've done 32 pantos, but 32 pantos, but my favourite was Scylla. And that was the famous story when Scylla was on stage and she said, "How shall I kill him?" And somebody went, "Sing to him!"
Oh, that's terrible.
Follow that.
Can we have a look at dogs, Mary-Ann, in the Telegraph?
I was going to say, moving swiftly. So this is news that dogs with long faces find it harder to be rehomed because everyone thinks they look sad or a bit angry. So things like greyhounds, ones with snouty muzzles, but also ones with flat faces like pugs. Also, everyone thinks they look sad rather than cute.
Yes, that's true, I think.
And so the suggestion is that in order to
buy them a mask,
make people
make
people kind of realise that the dogs are happy, have videos on rehoming sites and animal charities so you can see the dog in action, looking happy and jolly, rather than kind of just like dour-faced and snouty.
Yeah, it's like black and white cats are really hard to rehome in restaurant centres.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're the hardest ones to house, black and white, because they're ordinary. So, but I know, Timmy's black and white. I love a black and white cat. We're out of time, sadly. Mary-Ann, Pete.
Thank you very much.
It's been a joy.
It's been long. I'm going home now to iron my bed.
Good.
Yes, quite right.
I'm going home now to do no such thing.
Good.
Exactly.
Good. Thank you both.
The iron. That's what I want to know. Let's move on to a story that's been dominating the news and certainly is dominating the newspapers. Former tennis star Boris Becker is behind bars as we speak after being jailed for 2.5 years for hiding hundreds of thousands of pounds in assets to avoid paying his debts.
Yeah, three-time Wimbledon champion was sentenced yesterday. He was convicted of 4 charges under the Insolvency Act.
Well, let's talk now to somebody who is imprisoned and would know how to advise, if you like, Boris Becker at the moment. His former MP, now a Reverend, Jonathan Aitken. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning to you.
What would be the first piece of advice you would have given Boris Becker yesterday before he went into jail that would actually be useful to him today?
I think I'd say, don't be afraid. Prison is tough. Your first day is probably one of the worst days of your life. But you've done something wrong. The court has sentenced you, and you've got to get on with it. And the way to get on with it is, first of all, to go with the flow of Planet Prison, which is a pretty extraordinary place when you first arrive there, with its own rituals and customs, and a lot of them are quite difficult. On the other hand, I think he may be pleasantly surprised to find that there are some positives. The milk of human kindness very often flows strongly through a prison wing. He'll be received in a friendly way by his fellow inmates, I would guess. And I think that the prison staff are very experienced and very good, especially to new arrivals. So it won't be all bad. And he's a tough and resilient character. He will get through it. I don't expect he'll have any very nasty surprises. And I think he may have some positive surprises if he keeps his head down, doesn't become a tall poppy who throws his weight around, but just realizes that all men are equal in a prison uniform. You've just got to keep your head down, take it slowly, and he's not going to be in there for very long. He, I think, will only serve just over a year of his sentence before being released on license and perhaps on a tag. So he'll be able to cope with it, being the resilient character I think he is. He's made his mistakes, he's paying for them, but I don't think it's going to be terrible for him.
Is it important to look on the positive side of this? I mean, it's not always positive for people, but certainly for you. I mean, you went to prison in a sort of blaze of publicity, and it was very much seen as your downfall. And yet you've really turned life around, haven't you? You've come out a different man.
Well, I think other people turned my life around, not me. But I strangely had a positive experience in prison. That's not to say I liked it at all. I found it difficult, but there were, treasures in the darkness, and I made some real friends. I thought the system was fair and on the whole well run, despite the lack of resources. And I now work in prisons as a prison chaplain, as a voluntary prison chaplain in Pentonville. So I understand it pretty well. And I always demur from the kind of slightly hysterical tabloid view that it's the most terrible tragedy of life. There's life after prison. And it's very much going to be up to Boris Becker or anybody else what they make of life after prison. The question, I think, is, do they learn from prison? Do they learn from the experience of a fall? And if Boris comes out perhaps a bit less arrogant, perhaps a bit less prone to extravagance, and learns from his mistakes, he's a youngish man. He's going to come out of prison age 53 or so. I came out of prison in my late 60s. It's harder for an old dog to learn new tricks, but as a young dog, or youngish dog, I think Boris Becker will find new things to do post-prison and will not be devastated for the rest of his life by this disgrace.
Well, we would love to talk to you for longer. Sadly, we've run out of time, but Jonathan Aitken, Reverend Jonathan Aitken, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. And there is...
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a fascinating insight,
there is a man who a lot of people thought that at one time would be a potential Prime Minister. And my goodness, how life was turned out differently in the end.
Yeah, but hopefully life more fulfilling for him. Let us know what you think. In the meantime, we're going to take a short break and we're back with all the headlines in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Tory MP Neil Parish is facing calls to resign after being accused of watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber.
Very good morning to you. It is 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 30th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. This is your channel. This is the People's Channel.
Coming up for you today, porn in Parliament. The MP Neil Parish is under investigation for allegedly watching porn on his phone as he rejects calls to stand down, saying it was just an accident. What do you think?
As Russia escalates its invasion of Ukraine, the Foreign Office announces the UK will send war crimes experts to investigate alleged atrocities. We'll be speaking to ex-boxer and member of the Kiev Territorial Defence, Vladimir Klitschko, on the situation on the ground.
A fall from grace. Three-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker slammed for apparently not showing any remorse after being jailed for 2.5 years over a bankruptcy scam.
And TV personality Kim Woodburn will be joining us this hour with her cleaning tips, because we've been talking about all sorts of things like...
How often should you change the sheets? Exactly. Should you iron them?
Should you iron sheets?
Yes.
Or isn't life too short? We've got lots of your views on that, as you can imagine. It's turned out to be a very controversial topic.
It has indeed. So have your say. This is your channel, so have your say. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBnews.
We're the People's Channel.
So, as we're the People's Channel, we want to know where the people are. And there's loads of you watching, listening on the radio, or joining us online. So a very, very good morning to you, especially if you're in Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Hull, Swansea, Glasgow and London.
Yeah, it's great. But we've actually been able to... We've been told that that's where they're sort of peaking in our viewers at the moment. So thank you so much for watching and listening.
Yeah, isn't technology clever?
I know.
You sort of get these sort of insights. It doesn't give you your addresses, so don't panic. If you're listening on the radio, well, you're not alone on that either. We've got record radio player numbers as well. So loads of you listening, which is really good to know, because it's a good radio show.
Great support in Scotland, Midlands, Wales and Northern Ireland as well. It's absolutely brilliant to hear from you.
And we are extremely grateful, actually, which sounds weird. You don't hear that on TV much, do you? Or radio. But we are really grateful that you join us, because this isn't just about us two sitting here behind a desk. It's about engaging with you, having conversations with you, doing what you want in all of this.
Well, we
it's really
wouldn't
important.
be here without viewers, would we?
No.
Well, there wouldn't be much point to us without viewers.
Not really, no. It'd be a bit of a pointless task, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah. And it feels warm and cuddly, actually, when you get in touch as well.
Yeah. We've got loads of views, and we will go through some of those, as many as we can, as much as possible, a little bit later on.
But we'll also talk about the things that are making the news, and the Tory MP under investigation for allegedly watching pornography on his phone in the Commons chamber says it all happened accidentally.
Yeah, Neil Parish has rejected calls to stand down as an MP. He has had the Tory whip suspended. He's a select committee chair as well, and he said he will continue his duties as an MP whilst he cooperates with the investigation.
Now, this is extraordinary, because Neil Parish himself was on GB News 3 days ago when we knew it had happened, but nobody knew the identity of the MP. He appeared on GB News, obviously knowing that it was him that everybody was talking about, and this is what he said at the time.
I mean, I think the Whip's office will do a thorough investigation, and we will wait and see that result. And I think, from that, then the decision will have to be made what action to be taken.
Well, earlier we spoke to the Shadow Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson.
I think there is no comparison between the two. The police have looked into the matter. There's no case to answer. No rules were broken. I can see why Tory MPs ahead of the local elections want to spend their time seeking to drag us all into the gutter and make out that we're all the same. But really, you look at the number of fines that have been issued at Downing Street, the fact that the Prime Minister lied to the British people, that he's lied to Parliament, that we've got the only Prime Minister in modern times to have broken the law to still be in office, and understand just why they get it.
Well, apologies. She was talking there about Beergate.
Beergate, which was another thing that we've been talking about.
We did talk about it, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but not about that. We did ask her about the porn situation, but she didn't. That isn't the right clip, obviously. No. We'll sort that out.
And the point is about the porn situation is that everybody is sort of hiding behind the fact that now there will be an investigation. Isn't that just a way of kicking the whole matter into the long grass? Well, David Maddox is with us now, political editor of The Express Online. Hello there, David.
Hi, Anne.
Hello, hi. I mean, this Neil Parish incident, business, is extraordinary, isn't it? What do you make of it and the fact that he appeared on GBNews knowing that we were talking about him, but we didn't know we were talking about him?
I have to say the appearance on GBNews has actually just made it just so much worse. Not that appearing on GBNews is a bad thing, obviously, but just his... the way he was kind of trying to third person it, if you like, it was all about somebody else. We were certainly made quite a lot of that on our website yesterday, and I don't know. I think it's extraordinary. I can't imagine what went through his head to even do that. I mean, it's just amazing. Actually, I don't see really. We don't know the full circumstances, obviously, but I don't see any way back for him, and I'm not sure how he can remain as a committee chair.
What do you think of the investigation as a whole? Now, there are some questions to answer. You know, we need to know, he's claimed, you know, that it was just sent to his phone or whatever and he pressed it all accidentally. You know, perhaps that is the case. But actually, something like this, surely it could be resolved very quickly, and that surely should be the case, shouldn't it? Oh dear. Oh, we're honestly having a fun time with our technology this morning. Sorry about that. The old Tinternet drops out just when you need it. Yeah. But it is. I mean, it is that thing. And maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was. You just never know. And that's what the investigation needs to find out. But do it quickly. We've got David back, I think. David, this needs to happen quickly. This investigation, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I don't really see how much there is to investigate. I mean, it's pretty easy to do.
Oh, he's gone again.
He's gone again.
Sorry, David.
We won't go back to him after that. But we got the gist of what he was saying, which is important. I just find it an absolutely extraordinary thing that the man, knowing that it was him the country was talking about, came on to GBNews and then, as David put it there, third-personed the story. Yeah. You know, we got very heated about cost of living and things a couple of hours ago on the paper review. John has been in touch. Morning, John. And he raises an interesting point. He says, we travel to Manchester regularly, the football grounds are full, the shopping centres are packed, the nightclubs are busy, the restaurants are doing good business, the airport is overrun with holiday travellers. All of this while living with one of the most generous welfare states anywhere. Poverty, he asks? Well, I mean, I totally get where you're coming from, John. Except that Joe says, I own my own business and have so many vacancies, it appears that no one wants to work these days. Many that apply for the positions don't bother turning up to the interviews. It seems to be a tick-box exercise for the job centre so that they can continue to claim benefit. Surely if people need more money, they need to work for it. There's got to be a safety net. But it's like the safety net, it sometimes gets abused, I think, which is the nature of life, isn't it? But in terms of cost of living, there are always going to be people who can still go out and afford to do what they want to do. Yes. But nowadays we talk about poverty almost in terms of what sort of mobile phone you've got. Sometimes. You know, you feel that sometimes, don't you? But that isn't that interesting, because I think you're absolutely right that does happen, and then that takes away, doesn't it, from those people who are really on the breadline. Yeah. And, you know, can't afford to feed their kids or look after their pets that we were talking about yesterday. That's why sometimes my eyebrows raise when we talk about
poverty, families living in poverty. Of course, some are, but it depends how you define poverty, doesn't it? Bob says, we checked every penny coming in and going out when we first married 50 years ago. We still do it. We had no surplus until we retired and paid off our mortgage. We are now well off compared to some. I do believe that a lot of people are their own worst enemy when it comes to acting responsibly with money. It's not difficult. But do we teach it anymore? And I don't really mean teaching in schools, although maybe that's a good subject, how to handle money.
Yeah, because... well, I have to say I am very good with money. Some would describe me as being tight. But we had no money growing up, and Dad was made redundant and all the rest of it. And we did have to count every penny. Now, me and my brother didn't have a lot in many respects. We never felt poor, but my parents very carefully managed the money. And I've learnt that from them, from my dad especially, who's like really good with money.
Do you blame credit cards, the credit system? Do you know when? When I was brought up, in a cupboard under the stairs. But when I was brought up, you had to save up if you wanted something.
Yeah.
And now you don't.
No.
And it's very tempting the minute you give in to one credit card, isn't it?
Very tempting.
And that's how a lot of people get into financial difficulties.
Oh yeah.
Is credit cards.
Overspend.
Because you can. You can, and they allow you to build up a debt.
And when I was going to university, or just before I went, I remember my parents got a new sofa, and my mum had saved up £20 a week for 5 years or whatever to get the sofa, and it's like, you think, blimey heck.
Do you remember Green Shield stamps?
Oh, I don't, but I've heard of them.
Save up Green Shield stamps, and then you could get, you had booklets full of them, and then you could go and literally get something for what felt like free.
Yes.
We've been talking about mothers-in-law as well. Can I just tell you one story about mother-in-law? Because I thought this was rather good. Sure. Anna says, because the Pope has said we've got to be nice to our mothers-in-law because they are the mother of the people you love. Anna says, I watch you from the US and you bring the most wonderful feeling of home.
Oh.
Last week, I was in a supermarket here in North Carolina and I saw a gentleman wearing a T-shirt advertising his own air conditioning repair business. Its slogan was, cold as a mother-in-law's kiss. The Pope might not approve, but I found it very funny.
Yeah, you've got to have a laugh. You've got to have it, especially in these difficult times, you need to have a laugh because there's some awful stuff going on. We're quite lucky here in the UK, despite the problems that we've got, because we're not in Ukraine, are we, where things are certainly not improving. Russia is escalating its invasion. The Foreign Office has said that the UK is now going to send war crimes experts to investigate the atrocities committed by Russian forces.
And this all comes as 2 British charity workers have been reportedly captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. It's understood the volunteers, Paul, Yuri and Dylan Healy, were detained earlier this week at a checkpoint in the south of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, NATO's Deputy Secretary-General has said it could be years before the war is over. Britain, as we were reporting yesterday, is preparing to send 8,000 more troops to Eastern Europe.
So let's go to Kiev for a situation report from a Ukrainian boxing champion and member of the Kiev Territorial Defence, Vladimir Klitschko. Good morning, Vladimir.
Morning.
It's lovely to speak to you. What is the situation where you are at the moment? How do you see it?
I'm in the capital in the city of Kiev, and day before yesterday there was strike of 2 rockets that landed in almost in the center of the city, injuring people and killing one of the journalists of the Radio Freedom. And in the east and the south of the country, the war is still going on, and so military action is stronger as it could be. And not to forget people of Mariupol, which is in the south by the Azov Sea. Hours for them to leave. We're counting in hours because they've been without water, food, any medical supplies, and obviously, due to all the bombarding, majority of them are injured. And if there are going to be no corridor of life, not green corridor, but corridor of life, we're gonna lose the civilians and mostly women and children.
It's heartbreaking when we see what is going on, and I think it's sometimes it's the pictures that paint a thousand words. And when we've seen many images over the past few weeks of Mariupol and just how the city, Vladimir, appears to have been absolutely blown apart, devastated by what has happened.
It is not to take it easily. I never, ever thought in my life I'm going to face war. And it's just something that doesn't have any rules. It's not human. And this, so to speak, special operation that Russian army with the commander Vladimir Putin have started 66 days ago is just devastating. And it is very important to understand, according also to their propaganda, Russian propaganda, Ukraine is just the beginning. And I just want to address the world, the free world. We must stop this Russian invasion in Ukraine now. There is no other way but stop it here. Otherwise, this war is going to continue. And we are in one ecosystem in Europe. We're connected with each other and in the world. We cannot look away and thinking that Ukraine is somewhere far away, doesn't really touch your home. Trust me, if you're passively observing, you're part of this invasion. That's exactly what I'm saying. And that's why it's very important to stop this war together.
But how do we do that? How do we as the West and countries like the UK are obviously putting troops on standby within the region. We're sending you, a lot of weaponry, but obviously we're not coming into the country. Does that need to change?
There are many ways. Isolation, economical isolation of Russia, because every trade, every penny that they're getting from the trades, they're using for the weapons that today killing us Ukrainians. You've got ports. Just don't take Russian ships. Just go out there and be loud about it and demonstrate and show your solidarity if you really can't do anything. There are humanitarian help that would strongly need with medicine, with supplies, just regular supplies that we need here in Ukraine, especially in the south and the east of the country. There's so much to do, you can do actually. And I want to say thank you to Great Britain for supporting us from early days of this senseless war. Thank you. But please keep going. And it's never enough as long as this war is still going. We don't know how long it's going to last, but let's make sure it's going to be short. With your help and support on different stages, it's going to bring peace in Ukraine sooner than later. So let's stay together and with one front and fight this aggression.
News today, that we are indeed sending out, and I think other countries too, are sending out experts in war crimes to make sure that the war crimes that have been committed are logged, are investigated properly. You, as a member of the Ukrainian Territorial Defence, are you convinced there have been terrible war crimes? Have you seen yourself?
Yes, I did see it in Bucha, Gostomel, Irpin. I haven't seen as many tortured, executed bodies of civilians with their hands tied behind their back on their knee and executed with the headshots. I've seen it with my own eyes, many, hundreds of dead civilians. It's just horrifying. And there is no way, but that must be documented. And international and justice for all this torturing, raping, and killing must come. International court will, and is documenting it right now, and will find every person behind this murdering.
You're a very famous man. You're a tough man. You're a hard man from your entire career. And yet the things you say you've seen in places like Bucha, they must change you forever.
Well, war has changed all of us. Us Ukrainians that stand strong with our will against one of the strongest armies in the world. It did change us, and it did change the world. The world is not going to be the same, and this is another lesson that the world must learn. It cannot repeat again. And free world has been too silent since 2014, when Russia has annexed Peninsula Crimea, Ukrainian Peninsula Crimea, have started and backed up with military equipment, so-called separatists in the east of the country. That has been for the past 8 years. So the world was kind of asleep, and Russia just kept going. And this war that has started on 22nd of February is as devastating as it could be. So I just asking one more time, and I will not stop. Please support us. Please, let's stay together against this Russian invasion and this senseless war that started on 22nd of February. And only together, we eventually will defend the peace in Europe. It's not just peace in Ukraine, it's peace in Europe and the world. If we don't stop it, the consequences are going to be literally severe for all of us.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say you've certainly got your message across this morning. You really have. Thank you so much for joining us, Vladimir Klitschko. And do stay safe as much as you possibly can. Our love and prayers and thoughts are with you and your colleagues as well in the territorial defence.
Thank you for your support and keep on going. Thank you.
Yes,
Will do. Vladimir, thank you. Isn't it interesting when you talk to someone, and a lot of people that we've talked to who are over there, a very, very, very powerful testimony as to what they want the rest of the world to do, and what they're going through.
They're right to keep up the pressure, aren't they?
Exactly.
They really are. They're in the most terrible situation, and every time they come on, they plead, please carry on supporting us. But they do say thanks as well, particularly to the British government. So
isn't that interesting, though? Doesn't that make a difference? I think that makes and it makes a difference to us as the people of the United Kingdom, I think, to hear someone say thank you.
Yeah, former boxing champion there who went straight back into Ukraine to fight for his country and is doing so well, but as he said, he's seen things that he should never have seen.
Yeah, well, look, we're going to be talking more about this, and particularly about the British troops who are going to be heading out to parts of Eastern Europe over the coming months. We'll talk to our correspondent who's in Nottingham very soon.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're in the studio. Where are you? It's getting competitive, Anne.
Oh, why?
It's getting very competitive, because we did give that shout-out to the places where we've got the highest concentration of viewers, but that's... No, you're not happy, because you all want to mention. Quite right. Yeah. Roderick says, what about Swindon? I'm tuned in, as always. Well, morning, Swindon.
Morning, Swindon. And Billy says, dear Anne, can you please ask Stephen to mention Stoke?
Stoke.
Stoke. Good morning, Stoke.
Stoke.
Thank you, Billy.
I like Stoke. Darren says, my wife Fiona and I watch you every weekend. She's from Barrow-in-Furness, which is where I'm from, but now lives in Sussex with me. So
good morning, Barrow and Sussex.
Yes.
Yeah, Liz says, why a special welcome to all the areas that have huge numbers watching? I'm here in Wimborne, doing my best to get people watching your great news channel.
Well, you keep at it, Liz.
Good morning, Wimborne.
Yes. Carol says, we're watching and listening in Skegness.
Yes.
I always iron my sheets. I do them first. They're the easiest.
Graham says, I'm on the very north coast of Scotland, near Thurso.
Oh, very nice.
Good morning, Scotland, and good morning, Thurso, and good morning, Graham.
Elizabeth says, I'm watching your news channel from my tablet, so on the app, I presume, or YouTube, in my kitchen in Hamelin, in Germany.
Margaret and Bob say, we're Dorset viewers and never seem to get a mention. There are viewers west of London and south of Birmingham, you know, or perhaps we don't matter.
Yes, you do.
Excuse me, you do.
You do. Dorset.
Dorset. Good morning, Margaret and Bob.
Yeah. Oh, you all matter. Wherever you're watching, you all matter.
Yeah, but Enid says, I love the programme, but what's an iron? I agree with you, Enid.
Oh, what
absolutely.
a disgrace, Enid.
Yeah, we've been talking about, you know, whether you should iron your bed sheets. And I think life's too short.
No, it's got to be nice. We're talking to Kim Woodburn before too long, just a few minutes.
Yes.
So we're going to find out what she
She'll
thinks.
have a view. I wonder what it is.
I don't know. Meanwhile, lots of you having views, and it's interesting. We're talking to our viewer earlier on, but we had up on a link about British troops joining military exercises in Eastern Europe this summer. Western countries are boosting their presence because of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. And our viewer, Paul, was saying, I think this is an important step.
Yeah, it is. How do you at home feel about this? Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us now from Chetwynd Army Barracks at Chilwell in Nottingham. Hello there. Hi, Will.
Good morning. Yes, of course, it's 8,000 troops that will be taking part in exercises across Eastern Europe. Now, the Defence Secretary says that these are exercises that were already planned, but they've been accelerated and expanded in the wake of Russian aggression in Ukraine. So 8,000 troops, but there'll also be 72 Challenger 2 tanks, 12 tracked artillery guns and 120 Warrior armoured fighting vehicles. Now, there's a variety of different operations that are already ongoing, exercises that are already ongoing, and a few more that are going to be happening throughout the summer up until June, including in Estonia and Latvia, Finland, Poland, and North Macedonia. Yes, now it will include troops from the Queen's Royal Hussars, the Royal Welsh Battle Group and Royal Tank Regiment, plus King's Royal Hussars Battle Group and Sea Squadron of the Light Dragoons. Now, there's places just like Chilwell all around the country where there's army barracks, where there's navy barracks, and the RAF groups are based in these parts of England and across the whole of the United Kingdom. And so that creates a bit of an atmosphere around the place where people know them, they work with them, they're around them, they serve them in their shops. And so coming to places like this, you can get a real good idea of how people feel about the acceleration in what might be happening in Ukraine and the acceleration in Britain's involvement in exercises across Europe. So yesterday I was in Beeston, which is just a very short couple of miles away from where we are today in Chilwell, hearing their opinions on the news about the exercises.
First of all, I'd like to see a de-escalation. Obviously, everybody would. But in view of what's been emerging about the cares in the surrounding countries, to have support for them, I think, is very prudent, very essential. So it would be very good. I think it will also give some reassurance to the Ukrainians to know that they are not in this alone.
In my opinion, I served in Germany during the Cold War, when we had lots of troops to prevent Soviet expansion. and Putin seems to be carrying on very much the same attitude to expand the Russian Federation back to its old borders. So I think it's vital that we have troops there to deter his aggression.
Well, I'm glad to see the exercising, because I think they're going to need to go in, aren't they? It's just logic, that is. We've sat and watched it every day on the news, and it's horrendous. It's horrifying, isn't it? There's kiddies and everything. It's terrible, terrible.
Well, I think what they needed to do was a long time ago is start doing something to threaten them back a little bit, I think, more than anything, because they've just sent a missile straight into a meeting last night saying that it was full of arms and it was just a meeting conference place. So I think, yeah, they need to do something seriously quick, I think. Basically, there's a lot of innocent people getting killed, and it's all right bringing the people over here. I agree with trying to help them, but at the same time, our infrastructure can't take it, the hospitals can't take it, all the extra people here, it needs sorting out pretty quick, I think.
If we don't get actively involved, and if we're just showing that we are willing to keep a presence in the area and that President Putin's actions and statements are not scaring us, then I think that's something, yes, we should be proactive in saying that we will not bow to people bullying. But, especially the last few decades have proven, becoming involved in other countries' issues have been very problematic for both ourselves, the USA especially.
Yes, of course. Well, with this being some of the biggest exercises that Britain have taken part in since parts of the Cold War, there will be lots of people watching, lots of people seeing how this develops, seeing all the different footage that's put out by the various different groups, NATO, the Joint Expeditionary Force, the British Army. But there really is only one person this is all intended for. Of course, it's intended as a show of strength and a show of resilience to President Vladimir Putin in Russia, to show that the connections in Europe, the allyships between different countries in NATO is strong, and I think this is a real strong message that they'll be sending to the Russians.
OK, Will, thank you very much indeed.
And do stay with us, because we've got plenty more to come, including, let's settle this, should we iron bed sheets?
Yes.
Do stay with us, because the one and only Kim Woodburn joins us next, and she'll have a view.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
9:34 morning to you now. Coming up at 10 o'clock, as always, it's the Saturday selection with Esther and Philip. And Esther is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Not much to talk about at the moment.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
I thought you were going to ask the question then.
Oh, that was it.
Guys.
So what have you got?
Across this misogyny in Parliament.
Well, what I will say is, and maybe it's because I came into Parliament in my 40s, I found...
You're never 40, I can't believe
No, later, older than that, but I came into Parliament in my 40s.
No, I meant you're never as old as 40. That's what I meant.
well past that now. And I have to say, I came across more in media than I did in Parliament.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
And whether that was an age differential, I don't know. So, you know, I think we'll find it in all workplaces, but it has been, without doubt, a most unedifying week in Parliament, without a doubt. And should you need to be told that you can't watch porn in the chamber? Of course you shouldn't need to be told that. This is a place, it's like a court, isn't it? It's the centre of legislation. I mean, you've got to wear... jackets for chaps. It's just been... You don't now have to wear ties, actually, but it is, the centre of lawmaking. So, but what I'd like to see is a thorough investigation of what went on. He would have known you can't watch the porn in the chamber. I mean, could it have been that he was sent something, he opened something out he didn't know? So I think it's right that there is a full investigation of what goes on. But, of course, you can't have that happening in the chamber.
It just feels like, you know, it's one thing after another, after another, after another. Not just on one side of the House, but probably an awful lot on one side of the House.
Well, it certainly has been a lot going on in the last couple of weeks, without doubt. In fact, who we've got coming on our show a little bit later, a lady called Zelda Perkins, and she set up the group Can't Buy My Silence, and she was the lady, if you remember Harvey Weinstein, she was one of his victims, and she's talking about the non-disclosure clauses, because a lot of this misogyny or harassment is happening in all workplaces. But have they been bought off with a non-disclosure case, agreement, and people aren't finding out about it? So she is saying you shouldn't have them. We should know what's going on, and she's coming on our programme.
I've just got to ask you quickly, who's doing your papers today?
We've got a wonderful chap called Robert Taylor, writes for The Telegraph and The Express. But somebody else who's coming in is Carol Decker. Do you remember to Power?
Oh, yes.
Love Carol. China in
give
your
her our
hands.
love.
I certainly will. So she'll be on a little bit later on.
Fabulous. Hope you have a sing-along. Esther, thank you. We'll see you at 10.
But if it's me, I won't be singing along.
Oh, you should
I'll leave it all to Carol.
Is that one talent you don't have?
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
I don't have it either, but I'd give it a whirl.
You would, wouldn't you? You'd be able to resist.
Now, you can read this bit.
OK. When you ask for a pay rise, what do you expect your boss to say?
Yeah, well, Network Rail's Head of Communications for Wales and Western Region, Nikki Hughes, recently told those asking it's a lesson to those of us who should probably have worked harder at school.
A union has branded the comment foolish and out of touch.
Well, let's talk to Heather Scales, Managing Director of Heartbeat HR. Morning to you.
Morning.
What, should we expect to work harder if we want more money?
I think there's an element of that, but I think with this individual, they've taken a very broad brush approach to a group of people, which I think is very unfair.
I mean, in terms of PR for them, it's pretty bad, isn't it?
It is very bad. You know, the ladies apologised, but once you've said something, it's very difficult then to take it back. And, you know, what we've got to do is just to think about our employees. They're our biggest asset. We need to treat them well and with respect. And I think, unfortunately, this comment probably was very untimely, to say the least.
I can imagine a lot of our viewers say, well, hang on a minute, what's so wrong about being told if you want a pay rise, you should work a bit harder, or can you work a bit harder? Because... I mean, we can't just expect pay rises every 6 months or something, can we? We have to be able to show that it makes financial sense. I can't understand what's so bad about a boss thinking, well, what's in it for me?
I think the case here was the fact that the individual said, it's because you didn't work hard at school, you haven't got on in your career, which isn't the case. You know, there are a lot of people... business leaders, entrepreneurs, who may not have done very well at school, but have been very successful in their careers. So I think that was the issue of it. It was that, again, she wasn't necessarily thinking appropriately about the workforce and what they do.
Well, she might be out of a job herself after all of this. You never know.
No,
Perhaps she should have worked harder at school. Heather, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, I've come to some shocking revelations about Anne Diamond over the past 24 hours.
Oh, please. I'm not the only one.
She doesn't dust.
No,
She
doesn't.
She doesn't iron her bedding.
No. I mean, why do you iron bedding when you're going to get into it and crease it? The first use, you're going to crease it.
Yeah, it's lovely and crisp to get in. So I thought we'd better settle this debate once and for all.
Right.
So who better to ask than Kim Woodburn? Morning, Kim.
Hello,
How are you?
Absolutely. Hello, Anne. Hello, Stephen. And I'm shocked at you, dear. Shocked and appalled. Now, the point is, dear, I want to know how you get in your bed and in 2 minutes it's all creased. What are you doing, dear? What are you doing?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Well, I mean, I won't go into it because I find it rather vulgar for you to have said that. But, listen, it's nice to iron your sheets, my lovey. Come on. Do you know what I do with mine? I fold them in 4 so they've got one long sheet. I've got a good steam iron. You put it one side and it irons the lot. Truthfully, you don't have to go over the whole sheet. Put them into 4, good steam iron, put a few bob on it, and you've got it done, my lovely. And Anne, I must know, I'll call you later, dear, how you crease your sheets in 2 minutes. Perhaps you'll give me some tips, dear.
Oh, you are cheeky.
Now, see, Alison's been in touch and she says, I must admit I don't always iron my sheets, but when I get into bed on newly ironed sheets, I'm always glad I did.
Oh, absolutely. What about the pillowcases? I mean, I've got enough wrinkles on my face without lying on a pillowcase with wrinkles, dear. You know what I mean? You're not wrinkled all over. No, come on. Good. Today we've got super. This isn't years ago, in Grandma's time when you took hours. Just, folks, this is the tip. Fold them nicely. You never iron a bottom sheet if it's fitted. Of course you don't. It fits and stretches right over the bed, my lovely. You don't have to. But, my lovely, if it's a flat sheet or pillowcases, please iron them. They don't take long. And you look a meticulous woman. I'm ashamed of you.
I'm really getting it.
You are getting
Well,
it.
I have a lot of support,
Beautiful
from people who just said,
and terrible sheets.
Come on, Kim, life is too short. We've got other things to do. Ironing takes forever.
But, Anne, it doesn't, lovey. Look at the super steam irons you've got now. They cost under £70. Lots of steam. Stand them on top. As they fold your sheet into 4. A nice long sheet. Press one side and it goes right through. Truthfully, good irons now. Not years ago when you had to do every single bit of sheeting. Not at all, my lovely. Not at all.
About Chris, who says if you wash and fold correctly and smooth them, then they don't really need ironing.
Well, that's not true, my lovely. Unless he's using polyester, which are horrible to sleep on, my lovely. I mean, I do have cotton because, honestly, it's worth having cotton. But if you have polyester, you don't need to iron them. But, you perspire terribly on them, dear. You really do. I wouldn't want them. It's, you know what? Save up for your cotton sheets. They'll last you for years and years and years. Polyester are hot on you. If you're prone to a bit of passion, which I think Anne sounds as if she is, dear, on a polyester sheet, she'd slide off the bed, dear. She would. No cotton.
Couldn't think of the static.
Oh, the inference is horrible.
The static. What about...
Hang on, I've got support from Joan and Keith in Barnsley, who said, iron bed sheets? Absolutely not. Life is getting shorter by the minute. We're in our 70s now, and there are better things to do.
Oh, no.
I think it's about how you spend your time.
What about changing the sheets, though, Kim? How often should we change sheets?
No, but seriously, I do think, honestly, once a week is that you really must at least once a week. Because when you think of it, I'm not going into the details, it's breakfast time, but a lot falls off us, doesn't it, I mean, we get dandruff, people get acne, you get dry skin, we're hairy, aren't we? And all this falls onto your bed. And honestly, it's not nice, my love. Why do people today make such a fuss over housework? We've never had it so good, my love. When I was born, we washed the sheets by hand, and it is in a sink with a great big bar of fairy soap. I now throw it in a washing machine. We had an iron you had to spit on. I'm 80. You spat on the iron and put it on the fire. We got electric irons. Do you know we've got more modern conveniences than we can shake a stick at? We're jolly lucky. And do you know something? We do less housework. Why? It does it for you.
Because it's boring.
Do you think that's the thing? Have we got out the habit?
I can assure you I'm not boring. How dare you?
Well, you're not boring, but housework is.
I'll tell you something. Do you want a bit of excitement? Do you fancy a bit of excitement? Now, it's been all over the papers. This is a scoop for nothing.
Yeah.
It's been all over the papers. Kim Woodburn, very ill in hospital. I am not ill. I'll show you what's wrong with me. This is a scoop. See, I'm covering. I've got this on my neck. Now, I had my throat cut yesterday. No, I did. I had a very bad disc in the back of my neck right here. And it was affecting my hands, so I haven't been able to use them. So I went into hospital yesterday, on Wednesday, and he's cut my throat, a big gash here. I've just had a chin lift, and he's cut my throat. What a waste of money. Anyway, he's cut my throat, and he went in, this Dr. Cangela, with his fingers, took out the disc in this hole in my neck, put a titanium disc in. How he did it through this hole, I don't know. Stitched me up. And, of course, what I did was, for a joke, they came to the hospital bed and said, do you fancy a pee? I said, oh, not in that. I said, I'm not. I said, I'll use the toilet. I'm not crippled. She gave me a little paper pot. So I stuck it on my head for a joke and said, do you like my new hat? And put it on my internet. My husband put it on for me. I've had calls from America. Kim, Kim's ill. No, a few hours after my surgery, it's painful. I've got stitches. They sent me home. And my love, I'm fit as a fiddle. I've got about 4 or 5 weeks to rest. But I've got this big cut throat, dear. Might just not stop me talking. You've noticed that. I'm never short of a word.
Kim, are you a mother-in-law?
I'm not a mother-in-law. Nobody's that fortunate.
Oh, have you? But so you married, so did you know your mother-in-law? Did you get on with her?
Oh, I didn't, dear. She was a rat bag.
Oh, because the Pope.
No, look, Anne, close your mouth. You're catching fish, dear. No.
The Pope's come out and said we all need to be nice to our mothers-in-law.
There's lovely mother-in-laws. I'm not going to suggest. There's some smashing mother-in-laws. I've met some of my friends, got the greatest mother-in-laws in the world. But you know very well, my lovely, some aren't very nice. And when you marry an only child, my husband, an only child, and a son to boot, by God, you go through the mill. You know, there's never anyone good enough for him. And there isn't. So, no, I didn't like my mother-in-law. Not at all. Better off without her, dear. Thank you.
We love you, and we're so pleased to hear that you're not unwell. You've been through that process, but clearly you're fighting fit, and here you are talking on the television today. It's been brilliant having you on.
And I spent a fortune getting a neck lift. And they put how smooth it was. Now I've got a gash here. I spent, all the wrinkles gone, and now I've got a big cut throat. Why did I bother?
You look fantastic.
Well, we wish you well.
Hang on a minute. I'm having a gin, dear. I'm having a gin. Too damn. It's the pain. It's the pain.
Good on you. Yeah, it's medicinal.
Good for the pain.
It's medicinal.
Kim, thank you very much. It's great to talk to you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're quite an attractive man, you know.
Thank you.
Excuse me, how you had your flirt, but he's quite good looking, isn't he? Do you fancy an old broad full of energy?
You've missed your chance. I'm getting married in a fortnight, Kim, but never mind.
You don't know what you've missed, boy, I'll tell you that. Thanks ever so much, the two of you. Thank you.
Really good to see you.
It's lovely to talk to you, Kim. Thank you. And so glad to hear that you're well, because, yes, she was in the papers a lot yesterday, and everybody was saying she's been rushed to hospital and it was all terribly dramatic, but very clearly she was on top of it.
When you want a bit of drama, all you need is Aidan McGee and Stephanie Tetchy. It's as much drama as I can cope with. Morning, you two.
Morning, guys.
I was glued to that.
You are?
I was glued to that.
Yeah.
It's interesting,
Can we say you guys have had some interesting characters on the show today? It's been quite lively.
It has been lively today.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Now, is the sport lively, Aidan?
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, once again, it's on the front page of the Mirror today. Boris to serve time. This is quite an extraordinary story, but this is about Boris Becker being sentenced to prison yesterday. He's going to be in prison in Wandsworth, not too far away from where his home is in Wimbledon. But it centres around his bankruptcy, which happened 5 years ago, 2017. He failed to declare all his assets, which you have to do as part of a bankruptcy ruling. and he was found to have acted deceptively, and he hasn't learned his lesson because in 2002, some 20 years ago, back in Germany, he received a suspended sentence for tax fraud, and here he is, not exactly the same offence all over again, but still financial impropriety. And Judge Deborah Taylor said he hadn't shown any remorse or acceptance of guilt. But, I mean, just look at the range. We touched on it earlier, didn't we, the range of his excesses. I mean, £22,000 a month on his flat in Wimbledon, which he never relinquished over, even though he hadn't really earned significant...
He couldn't afford it any longer.
Well, exactly, you're absolutely right. I mean, he finished playing tennis in 1999, and I've seen this so many times with sports people. I was in the back of a cab in 2008 with a very famous sports personality, right? I was doing a story with him. I can't say who it is because he's since rebuilt his life, and I don't want to drag him back into it. But we're in the back of a cab. This guy's on his uppers. He's absolutely skint. We're in a cab going through... I mentioned Harrods because that's quite pertinent because Boris Becker went to Harrods as well. And he had to stop off in Harrods to go to a tobacconist to buy an expensive £50 cigar. He couldn't relinquish, couldn't let go of that lifestyle. And that's the problem. When the tap goes off, they can't adapt their lifestyle and they're spending, more crucially, accordingly.
Do
you blame them?
He was famous at 17, winning Wimbledon. So that he spent his entire adult life never having to think about money, and clearly...
Definitely. And the thing is, celebrities, they become accustomed to this lifestyle and they will fight tooth and nail to keep it. Just some of them know when to let it go, but clearly in Boris's case, he hasn't, and he's just gone from worse to worse to worse, and it just hasn't worked out in his favour. But for me, I'm glad he was made an example of, because it's about time, because sometimes these celebrities get away with murder. Like, if you think of someone like Katie Price, she should be doing sentence right now, and she's managed to escape it. It's like she's above the law. And to be honest, I think 2.5 years is nothing. How long is he actually going to serve?
He'll probably serve...
Not much over a year.
He'll do half it on licence, but then good behaviour, you might get a subtraction again. And he's not exactly far from home. It's not like he's been sent up to a prison in the middle of the sea.
Well, no, we don't know where he'll end up because he'll be in a...
It's overcrowded, though. It's overcrowded.
He'll get moved away.
They start them off in a tough one.
Yeah, and
see how they behave.
I'm sure he'll come out with a book as soon as he comes out as well. My time in prison.
Probably.
He's already got the money back.
You mentioned that. It might be actually a good thing if he comes out a book and lists all his experiences.
He needs to be advised to say the right things, though, to keep his fans on board.
Yeah.
I mean, we love him. He's very funny, very entertaining, and clearly an incredible tennis player.
Yeah.
Or he was. So we want to love him. But he needs to say the right things. I just think the Mirror must have so enjoyed putting that on their front page. Boris to serve time.
When I heard about finance, I thought it was all about backhanders. But...
I saw your tweet last night.
It's interesting because it does damage your reputation, because someone who had a lot of brushes with the law was George Michael.
Oh, my gosh.
And although he was still so loved... I mean, his career went down the pan.
It did, but he managed to bounce back as well, because, you know, with most of these celebrities and sports stars, we have to put that separation between what they do and who they are as humans. Humans are always going to mess up, and with George Michael, obviously, he had a few brushes with the law, with that toilet escapade that he had in LA. I know, but I loved George Michael right until the end, and I still do. And they've just released a trailer for his new documentary, Freedom Uncut, and it looks amazing.
And this, you say it's a new documentary.
Yeah.
But this has got lots of video in it that's never been seen.
Really nothing. It's all this, what the viewers can see at home is like, it's amazing, unseen things that we've never seen. And he's narrating it. So he was narrating this right up until his death in 2016.
Which is, that's going to be extraordinary.
Yeah.
I did see him live.
Yeah.
I saw him at the when he performed at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert back in 1992.
Wow.
And do you know what? He was amazing. I mean, they were all amazing that day, but his voice was just so incredible.
Was that Wembley, Stephen?
At Wembley, yeah.
He was such a sensitive soul. That's what I liked. It's amazing.
In fact,
we gone over?
no, April. Was it April the April the 20th? It was, not the 30th. I was thinking it was the anniversary today. April the 20th, 1992.
Oh. I seen him in concert actually when he performed at Wembley Stadium about maybe 10 years ago, and he was incredible, really
real
star
talent.
quality.
It didn't matter what he did in some ways. The public, what mattered most was that the public loved him, and that's why he was able to rebuild. And that's why I think Boris has still got a bit of a chance.
But that's what I find fascinating about the public, because the public, we always forgive our stars, don't we?
We do if they're nice and cuddly.
Yeah, we're much harder on politicians than we are on celebrities.
Yeah.
That's probably quite right.
Yeah. I should think so.
We hold them in higher regard.
We do, don't we? It's crazy in a way, isn't it? Daft in a way that these people who, just... I mean, if you sing, I know it's a real talent, but... it's not like a hard day's work in the same way as someone working in a shoe factory.
You bring joy to people, aren't you?
It's important. You're entertaining people.
You bring joy to people, and it's so hard, to get to the top of the charts, isn't it? It's a difficult art writing.
I know tours and things are a really hard slog. But I just remember when I worked in a shoe factory, and when I was a teenager, and some of the ladies there, the older ladies, saying, "Oh, I've only got another 5 years and I'll retire." You think, 5 years? I was there for 2 months. And that was enough. It was really hard slog.
Yeah.
It's a proper job.
Without proper compensation as well, because at least the talented, George Michael,
they're remunerated in the right way.
They get a lot of money for what they do. Yeah.
They do. Well, look, thank you both.
Always a pleasure.
I love it when the family's on.
I know, we are family. I call us the awesome foursome.
Yeah.
Yes, we are the awesome foursome.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow as well.
Our family and your family, because we all want to feel part of your family, as always. So do tune in for us tomorrow, but don't go anywhere, because it's the Saturday selection in just a moment.
Hello, a very good morning to you. This bank holiday weekend starts off chilly for many, but with plenty of sunshine across much of the UK. Not for all. It is going to turn increasingly damp in the north. That's because an area of low pressure is now approaching. The weather fronts associated with it have been bringing thicker cloud into the northwest and outbreaks of rain. And that's how things start, really, for much of the UK. It's bright for eastern and southern Scotland. Plenty of sunshine for England and Wales, despite the chill in the air. But in the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well, rain soon turns up, and that rain becomes more persistent and in places heavy, particularly over western hills and coasts of Scotland. Spreads to eastern and southern Scotland, parts of the far north of England through the afternoon. But away from that, we keep the sunny spells, and actually it's a warmer day compared to yesterday.